Chapter 791. According to the secret manual, when the purple thunder divine incantation broke through to the 7th layer, there would be a lightning tribulation and a heart tribulation. After the official breakthrough, there would be great benefits. Xiaochen was filled with anticipation and nervousness. According to the records, if he could not clear the tribulation, he would end up dying. There was no perfect cultivation technique in the world. The purple thunder divine incantation could cultivate both quintessence and mental energy. Furthermore, its effects far surpassed those of similar heaven-ranked secret techniques. Now that the purple thunder divine incantation had reached the 7th layer, its tribulation had arrived. Whether it could safely clear it or not, Xiaochen was not confident. Be it the lightning tribulation or the heart tribulation, they were not that easy to deal with. After taking another deep breath of the fragrance in the room, Xiaochen tossed aside these messy thoughts. He sat cross-legged on the prayer mat and entered a state of cultivation. There was no concept of time when cultivating. 3 days later, after the deep-sea coumarin grass finished burning, Xiaochen slowly opened his eyes. The bottleneck of the purple thunder divine incantation's 6th layer far surpassed Xiaochen's expectations. Even after absorbing the spiritual energy of 10 rank 2 spirit veins without restraint, he showed no signs of reaching the bottleneck. For some reason, Xiaochen heaved a sigh of relief. However, he immediately startled awake. Although he maintained a calm mental state, in reality, he still feared the lightning tribulation and the heart tribulation of the 7th layer. If he could not clear it, he would die, turning into dust and vanishing from the world. All his glory and dreams would vanish like smoke. Xiaochen could not help but smile self-mockingly. He raised his right hand and clenched his fist. When he felt the surging energy in his body, he muttered, "Death, it seems like the higher one's cultivation realm, the stronger one's strength becomes. The fear of death is no longer as indifferent as before. Is it because the more one obtains, the more one fears losing, resulting in one's contentment with the status quo? Between a peddler and a person of high authority, who is more afraid of death? Clearly, the latter is the latter." In the end, Xiaochen was just an ordinary person. Even though he understood some principles, he could not do it. For now, Xiaochen had no good way to counteract this disadvantageous mental state. The more he thought about it, the deeper his heart demon would be. Xiaochen shook his head and stopped thinking. Then he got up and headed for the combat room. After preparing sufficient spirit-gathering pearls, Xiaochen activated an inferior-grade martial sage bladesman-type combat puppet to fight with him. The humanoid combat puppet had everything an inferior-grade martial sage could grasp. Heavenly sage laws, heaven-ranked martial techniques, movement techniques, auras, and everything else. It even possessed a certain level of intelligence. As the other party did not feel pain, Xiaochen would have a much harder time dealing with it than a true inferior-grade martial sage. 6 hours later, Xiaochen ran out of Zhenyuan. He exited the combat room and took out the Holy Spring spirit milk from the compartment in front of the door. Drinking a drop, his quintessential essence instantly recovered to its peak state, and he charged in once more. By the time Xiaochen could deal with the 5 inferior-grade martial sage combat puppets, he had already exhausted all the Holy Spring spiritual milk. After 3 consecutive days of high-intensity combat, Xiaochen had gained a lot of insights and gains in saber techniques. So he spent another day to digest these insights. During these 7 days, Xiaochen's bitter cultivation in the Heaven Series training camp was equivalent to half a year outside. Furthermore, there were many conditions that the outside world could not create. Indeed, the Heaven Series training camp has many benefits. If only I could cultivate here for half a year. I wonder if that would be enough for me to reach peak half-sage? Xiaochen said somewhat greedily. 1 month was simply too short. Senior brother Xiaochen. A somewhat distant shout came from outside the courtyard of the training room. Xiaochen raised his eyebrows and left the combat room. With a few flashes, he flew out of the courtyard. When Xiaochen discovered that the person who came was Zhongyi, whom he had met once outside the Heavenly Battle Palace, he felt very uncomfortable hearing Zhongyi call him senior brother. Zhongyi smiled and said, "I wonder if I have interrupted senior brother Xiaochen's bitter cultivation? If so, this Zhong apologizes." Xiaochen smiled calmly and said, "Brother Zhong, there is no need to be so polite. Just call me Xiaochen. I have already used up all the Holy Spring spiritual milk and deep-sea coumarin grass. Coincidentally, I was just about to go out to collect more. When Zhongyi saw that Xiaochen was so low-key and did not put on any airs, he heaved a sigh of relief. He smiled and said, "In that case, I will not stand on ceremony. The palace master is preparing to bring people to Blackwater Star. He instructed me to ask if you are interested in going." Xiaochen suddenly recalled that this was no longer the Kunlun continent, but the starry heavens. I would be happy to. Xiaochen had been looking forward to the starry heavens for a long time. Now that he had a chance to experience it, naturally, he would not let it go. However, it was a pity that he would be delaying his time in the Heaven Series training room. When Zhongyi heard Xiaochen's straightforward reply, he was somewhat surprised. After all, the benefits of the Heaven Series training room were that people who had the opportunity to enter were reluctant to leave. Xiaochen smiled gently and said, "Brother Zhong, I wonder if you can tell me more about the starry heavens? I have always been curious about them." After Zhongyi heard that, he replied humbly, "Without reaching superior grade martial sage, there is no way to survive in the starry heavens. However, it is still very difficult. Only Grandmaster-level martial sages can survive alone and take risks. However, they cannot leave alone for too long. Only those who are at least the blue-robed emperor can travel freely in the starry heavens and experience dangers everywhere. Hence, I do not know much. Brother Xiaochen, if you have any questions, just ask. I will do my best to answer." Xiaochen thought for a while before asking his first question. "How far is this star we are standing on from the Kunlun continent?" "I know that." Zhongyi smiled and said, "The Haotian star we are standing on is actually not far from the Kunlun continent. We just need to break through the barrier of the sky and travel 5,000 kilometers. Most of the bases that can be established in the stars are within this range. If it is too far, even Emperor Wu might not be able to protect it." 5,000 kilometers sounded very far. However, in the context of the boundless starry heavens, it was indeed very close. However, breaking through the barrier of the sky was extremely difficult. Without the cultivation of a Grandmaster-level martial sage, one would not be able to move the barrier of the sky at all. The star under Xiaochen's feet should be the one where the previous Emperor Wu of the Haotian sect spent a lot of effort, and met with many fortuitous encounters to open a space-time tunnel to the main sect. Otherwise, given the strength of several martial sages on this star, they would not have been able to break through the barrier of the sky and come here alone. Through this exchange of questions and answers, Xiaochen obtained some information that he did not know before. For example, the barrier of the sky, which covered the entire Kunlun continent, existed only in the Kunlun continent. None of the other stars had such a powerful, vast, and seemingly boundless barrier. Furthermore, such a barrier had an even stronger defense against astral beasts. Even the astral beasts, which were as strong as Emperor Wu, could not break through the barrier of the sky. Due to the protection of the barrier of the sky, the Kunlun realm was free from the invasion of astral beasts. Otherwise, it would be an even more severe disaster than the demonic calamity. However, Zhongyi did not know much about some of the profound things. The Heavenly Battle Palace disciples rarely had the chance to leave the Haotian star. Furthermore, Grandmaster-level martial sages would protect them every time, preventing them from leaving on their own. As the two spoke, they arrived at the gathering place, the drill ground of the Heavenly Battle Palace. Many of the previous true inheritors were there. Aside from the disciples at critical junctures in their cultivation, or those who had gone out on business, most of them were here. After all, if one was lucky, one might be able to obtain great fortuitous encounters in other unknown stars. It could be sect remnants from the immortal epoch, the cave of a mysterious powerhouse, rare ores, or wondrous items. Of course, the chances of this were extremely small. There was only a sliver of possibility. If there were truly great fortuitous encounters, the Grandmaster-level martial sages and the blue-robed emperor would have found them long ago. Xiaochen could only see if he could find some that slipped through the net. When Xiaochen appeared in the drill ground, he immediately felt several gazes. This was especially so for Cui Hao, who appeared extremely surprised. Unexpectedly, This fellow gave up on cultivating in the Heaven Series training room and came here to join in on the excitement. Others might not be able to personally experience the benefits of the Heaven Series training room, but Cui Hao had stayed there for a long time and was very familiar with its benefits. When the two vice palace masters of the Heavenly Battle Palace saw Xiao Chen arrive, they nodded to themselves. Then they started to explain some things to take note of on this trip. The Blackwater star we're going to this time is a little different from the stars we've been to before. All the alien beasts above level 4 have been killed by the vice sect leader, but the alien beasts below level 4 are still around. So we mustn't stray too far away from us. The main purpose of this trip is to subdue a few rank 3 spirit veins on Blackwater Star. At the same time, we can let you fight with some weak astral beasts to gain combat experience. Of course, if you obtain any wondrous items during experiential training, they will be your personal property. The sect will not care about subduing them. The two superior grade martial sage vice palace masters spoke one after another, carefully explaining the things to take note of. This was the first time Xiao Chen experienced such an adventure in the starry heavens. He listened very seriously, not missing a single word. Suddenly, urgent whistling sounds came from above. A huge shadow fell on the ground. When Xiao Chen looked up, he saw a king-grade warship flying over. The two vice palace masters knew that it was time to depart. So they called someone over and got that person to hand out a purple jade pendant with the word, Haotian, on it to every disciple preparing to go to the starry heavens. Xiao Chen asked Zhong Yi, who was beside him, about the function of this jade pendant. The king-grade warship had its own protective barrier. With this jade pendant, one could pass through the barrier unobstructed. Jade pendants were divided into mother and son. The palace master and the vice palace masters could use the mother jade to locate the disciple with the son jade. If one ran into any unpredictable danger, they could activate the sun jade to ask for help from the mother jade. At the same time, there was a star map attached to the jade pendant. There were simple markings on it. The stars around Haotian where the Kunlun realm factions were stationed. If one lost their way, they could find a star with a Kunlun realm faction to descend on. Otherwise, surviving on a desolate, abandoned star would most likely result in death. Of course, it would be best to find a star with a Tianwu domain faction, or the human monarch star where Bushan Palace was. Otherwise, if one went to a star of another race, it would be just as dangerous, perhaps even more so. Chapter 792. Danger lurked everywhere in the starry heavens. It was clear that the Haotian sect had put in a lot of effort to ensure the safety of this group of disciples. Put on your jade pendants and board the warship. Whoosh. Right after the vice palace master spoke, the many disciples on the drill ground immediately leaped up and passed through the king-grade warship's protective barrier, landing on the deck one after another. Xiao Chen casually sized up this king-grade warship. It was about 300 meters long and 30 meters tall. Its entire body was pitch black, and its hull was made of Yama black gold, a rare or found in the starry heavens. The purple banner of the Haotian sect hung on the bow of the warship, with the word Haotian written on both sides. High-ranked ancient demonic energy cannons were mounted on the deck and the surroundings of the warship. The might of the high-ranked ancient demonic energy cannons was very strong, no weaker than the full-power strike of a Grandmaster-level martial sage. With 100 cannons firing together, they could instantly kill a Grandmaster-level martial sage. There was even a sage-grade ancient demonic energy cannon, hidden in the mouth of a mutated beast at the front of the warship, something that could threaten a strong existence like the blue-robed emperor. Xiao Chen could even vaguely sense extremely complicated and mysterious talisman scripts on the warship's protective shield, appearing indistinct. Only when Xiao Chen infused his spiritual sense into his eyes could he see flickering golden spots of light. Xiao Chen thought to himself, this king-grade warship is not as simple as it looks on the surface. Just as Xiao Chen thought this, the bow of the warship tilted up slightly, for exhaust pipes popped out from the stern, and red flames spewed out ferociously. The warship moved at Mach 2, heading for the sky. Then it continuously accelerated until it reached Mach 10, leaving this star. At a certain moment, Xiao Chen lost his center of gravity. His body floated up involuntarily. He immediately realized that he had arrived in the starry heavens. Although this was the first time Xiaochen experienced something like this, he did not panic. He circulated his quintessence and landed back on the ground. The other disciples had wanted to see Xiaochen make a fool of himself. They had not expected that Xiaochen would not panic at all. They were all shocked. After walking on the bow for a while, Xiaochen quickly got used to the absence of gravity. Furthermore, he discovered that the starry sky of this world was somewhat different from the starry sky of his previous world. When Xiaochen turned his head back and looked at his surroundings, he saw the boundless starry sky. The visual impact of the boundless starry sky was many times stronger than when he was on the ground. This was not the first time the other disciples on the bow had seen such a scene. However, the shock in their hearts was not any less than Xiaochen's as they stared at their surroundings. The outer space was not peaceful. Meteorites would fly toward the battleship from time to time. The advanced magic cannons around the battleship had not stopped firing since they arrived in the outer space. Resplendent beams of light blossomed in the starry sky, shattering the incoming asteroids. Otherwise, if they crashed into the barrier at such a terrifying speed, it wouldn't be a small matter. Xiaochen lowered his head and fiddled with the jade pendant on his chest. He recalled that the jade pendant contained a map of the nearby starry sky. Feeling curious, he sent in his spiritual sense. A three-dimensional star chart immediately appeared before Xiaochen. The battleship and the people around him seemed to have disappeared. He felt like he was standing alone in the outer space. The stars on the star chart were marked with various colors. Blue stars indicated that other factions of the Kunlun realm were stationed there. The other colors of different shades indicated the danger level of the stars. The stars on the star chart were not fixed. They moved at high speeds at every moment, giving off a very wondrous feeling. As Xiaochen's gaze moved, the star chart would slowly move. When he looked closely, the small stars would grow larger. However, this star chart was clearly just an ordinary continent. The starry sky marked was not particularly vast, and many things were rather crude. After the novelty vanished, Xiaochen felt that it was no longer interesting, so he withdrew his spiritual sense. Just as Xiaochen withdrew his spiritual sense, he looked into the distance with his peripheral vision. 10 odd clumps of light burning with scarlet flames quickly flew towards the warship. The scarlet flames looked very dazzling in the dark starry sky. It's a flame crystal rock. Several disciples at the bow of the warship cried out excitedly, their eyes lighting up when they saw this item. The two vice palace masters guarding the bow of the warship were somewhat astonished as well. Then they smiled and said, "It really is a flame crystal rock. Unexpectedly, we are so lucky. When we come over later, make your move. However, remember not to stray too far from the warship." However, Xiaochen frowned slightly. His spiritual sense could see much further than the mental energy of the two vice palace masters. He could see a young man with a dark and sullen expression sitting on a black throne behind the 10 odd clumps of light burning with scarlet flames. There was a clump of pitch-black clouds below the throne. The dark-faced man drove the throne forward quickly, chasing after the scarlet clumps of light in front. The entire throne gave off a deathly aura. Xiaochen felt a strange sense of familiarity. The scarlet throne in his sea of consciousness started shaking restlessly. After absorbing a flame crystal rock, a cultivator would have a high chance of comprehending the state of fire. After a cultivator with the state of fire absorbed the flame crystal rock, the might of their state would become even stronger. It was even possible to directly comprehend a will after absorbing some of the higher quality flame crystal rocks. Of course, such peak-grade flame crystal rocks were extremely rare. Furthermore, they were worth cities. Very few people discovered them. Clearly, none of the flame crystal rocks flying towards the king-grade warship contained any peak-grade flame crystal rocks. Otherwise, the two vice palace masters would not have been able to hold themselves back. However, their value could not be underestimated. Furthermore, there were many of them. Just one would be enough to make a small fortune. The scarlet clumps of light became increasingly distinct. With just the naked eye, one could see the red crystals within the flames. Whoosh! 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 Many figures soared into the air, flying towards the scarlet clumps of light. The two vice palace masters glanced at the unmoving Xiaochen. Then the old man on the left said, Xiao Chun, go and fight for it as well. As long as you do not stray too far from the warship, you should be safe for 4 hours. There is no air in the starry heavens. At first, you will not be able to control your speed. You should get used to it first before you go and fight for the flame crystal rocks. The person on the right gave some advice. Xiao Chun could not help but smile bitterly. Naturally, he wanted to fight for the flame crystal rocks. Even if he could not use them, he could still exchange them for a large sum of astral coins. However, the throne that the mysterious man chasing from afar was clearly the death throne of the evil monarch throne. It came from the same source as Xiao Chen's massacre throne. Ao Jiao once said that the evil monarch throne was split into 7. Each of them represented a high-ranked state. As long as one could snatch and merge the other party's throne, they would be able to gain another high-ranked state. Aside from the energy states of wind, water, fire, thunder, and earth, there were also states of massacre, destruction, immortality, ruin, death, despair, darkness, and other even more difficult to comprehend high-ranked states. With each additional state, a cultivator's strength would increase by leaps and bounds. If that mysterious man sensed that Xiao Chun had the massacre throne, he would definitely charge over without a care for anything else. As for the rumor that the evil monarch was reborn after merging the 7 thrones, no one would believe it. Xiao Chun, don't worry. You will take this step eventually. It is good to familiarize yourself with it now. The 2 vice palace masters continued to console Xiao Chun. They thought that Xiao Chun was worried about the unfamiliar environment of the starry heavens, and was unwilling to go out. Xiao Chun's bitter smile turned into a conflicted one. He had no choice but to go out now. He controlled his mental energy in his sea of consciousness, and wrapped the restless scarlet throne in layers. Xiao Chun understood the principle of possessing a jade ring in one's pocket. He had not used the scarlet throne all this while because he was not strong enough. Once it was exposed and attracted the attention of some experts, it would be a huge hidden danger. With a gentle push, Xiao Chun instantly passed through the protective barrier of the warship, and arrived in the boundless starry heavens. The instant he exited the barrier, he clearly felt the pressure on his body decrease. His speed automatically increased by 20%. Without the obstruction of air in the starry heavens, one would be much faster than in the Kunlun continent. After reaching a certain level of speed in the Kunlun realm, one would hit a bottleneck. Only by entering the void would one be able to increase one's speed. However, tearing the void of the Kunlun realm was something that even Grandmaster-level martial sages could not do. After adapting to his surroundings, Xiao Chun held his breath and circulated his quintessence. Then he looked at the situation in front of him. Cui Hao took the lead, nimbly dodging the meteors in the starry heavens, rushing ahead of everyone else. He was the closest to the 10-odd clumps of scarlet flames, his eyes filled with excitement. Ao Jiao, I used my mental energy to envelop the throne in several layers. That fellow should not be able to discover it, right? That should not be the case. If you can still be discovered, the result will be the same whether you leave the warship or not. This conversation allowed Xiao Chun to relax. As for the flame crystal stones, they were not something that he urgently needed. If he could fight for them, he would. Xiao Chun executed the Thunder Dragon steps and narrowed his eyes. Then he quickly dashed forward, overtaking a large group of people, and flying side by side with Cui Hao. Haha, I might lose to you on land, but it is impossible for you to defeat me in the starry heavens, Cui Hao said to Xiao Chun beside him. Cui Hao said sullenly to Xiao Chun, who was beside him. Then he increased his speed again, leaving Xiao Chun far behind. Hearing Cui Hao's mocking words, Xiao Chun smiled faintly and ignored him. He continued flying forward at a constant speed. Good. The first flame crystal stone is mine. Cui Hao revealed an expression of joy. Then his figure moved, heading for the long flame crystal stones. Then he stretched out his hand, wanting to grab a flame crystal stone. His quintessence surged, and a flame crystal stone immediately left its original trajectory and flew towards Cui Hao. The joy on Cui Hao's face deepened. He stepped forward and tried to grab the flame crystal stone. Scram! How dare you snatch something that one can't have my eyes on? A ferocious shout suddenly came from the distance. Suddenly, A black energy appeared in front of Cui Hao and swept over like a whip. The flame crystal stone that was about to fall into Cui Hao's hand was instantly knocked away. The black quintessence's might did not diminish, continuing to sweep towards Cui Hao. Chapter 793. A Corpse Race Cultivator? Cui Hao's expression changed slightly. A scimitar appeared in his hand, and he sent out a crescent moon-shaped saber chi to scatter that black chi. However, the black chi did not disappear immediately. It wrapped around the scimitar and spread downwards, looking like the arm of a demon. It looked extremely strange. A light flashed, and Cui Hao circulated some quintessence to get rid of the black chi from the scimitar. When Cui Hao looked up, he saw a young man with a dark complexion standing on a black cloud. This young man held a long whip in his hand, looking very lifeless. However, this young man's eyes were exceptionally sharp. When he stomped on Cui Hao felt an unparalleled sharpness. Where did this corpse race cultivator come from? He is so young, and he is already a peak half-sage. Cui Hao thought to himself in shock. Xiao Chun, who had rushed over, casually scooped up the flame crystal rock that had been knocked away. The scarlet flame vanished. A dark scarlet crystal the size of a marble appeared before Xiao Chun. He could not help but feel somewhat disappointed. Based on the color and size, he could guess that this flame crystal rock was of inferior quality. He glanced at Cui Hao and the mysterious corpse race cultivator, who were facing each other. Then he shifted his gaze to the flame crystal rock, which continued to fly. Among the 10-odd flame crystal rocks, there would definitely be one with an above-average quality. However, Wang Can, who was seated on the throne, smiled sinisterly. Then he soared into the air, and his figure flickered. Riding on a thick cloud, he arrived before the large group of flame crystal rocks. Wang Can swept out with the whip in his hand, and a berserk wind blew. The trajectory of the 10-odd flame crystal rocks was completely disrupted. Then Wang Can swung his whip again, and 3 or 4 flame crystal rocks flew into his hand. Then he smiled coldly at the pursuing Cui Hao and pointed to the air. 2 stone coffins appeared in the air, one in front and one behind, blocking Cui Hao. The doors of the coffins opened, and a horrifying corpse chi poured out. 2 sinister demonic corpses wearing heavy stone armor launched themselves at Cui Hao. The full moon disk in Xiao Chun's body hovered above his head, sending down a silk-like screen of light. Cui Hao held the waning moon curved blade, and heavily chopped the chest of the demonic zombie in front of him. A muffled sound rang out. This saber strike actually didn't break the stone armor on the demonic corpse's chest. It only left a shallow mark and knocked it back 10 meters. The demonic zombie behind him took the chance to charge over. Its 5 black fingers were as sharp as knives, stabbing into the curtain of the full moon wheel. To Cui Hao's surprise, the moonlight curtain was unable to block the demonic corpse's attack. A black corpse chi lingered on its fingertips. The curtain seemed to be corroded, and was easily pierced by the demonic zombie's fingers. The demonic zombie laughed cruelly and grabbed Cui Hao's back with its 5 fingers. At this moment, Cui Hao had just repelled the demonic corpse in front of him. There was no time for him to dodge. The corpse energy on the fingertips might contain the will of death, and it would be a fatal blow to him. Just as the demonic corpse was filled with terror, a loud sound came from behind it. A foot pressed down on the demonic corpse's head, and a huge force surged out, sending the demonic corpse flying several thousand meters. Bang! An interstellar meteorite whizzed over, and collided with the devil corpse. The meteorite shattered into pieces, but the devil corpse wasn't damaged in the slightest. This corpse is extraordinarily strong, Xiao Chun thought to himself. This demonic corpse is much stronger than the demonic corpses refined by the Dark Church in the Sky Dome realm. Many thanks. After escaping with his life, Cui Hao thanked Xiao Chun sincerely. He had been too careless. Xiao Chun smiled faintly, and pointed to the front. Cui Hao suddenly understood. There was still one more demonic corpse that he had not dealt with. Now was not the time to thank him. Xiao Chun looked around. With this delay, the genius corpse race cultivator called Wang Can had already snatched away the 10-odd flame crystal rocks. That's not right. He did not snatch them away. A grave expression flashed on Xiao Chun's calm face. Just as the other party's whip was about to snatch away the last flame crystal rock, the flame crystal rock actually managed to struggle free. A resplendent electric light burst out from under Xiao Chen's feet. He executed Thunder Dragon steps at full power. Then, he raised his leg and leaped, instantly crossing the 5-kilometer distance. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and grabbed the last flame crystal rock. The scarlet flame vanished, and a deep-colored, crimson crystal appeared in his hand. Xiao Chen's face lit up in joy. He said, "It really is a superior-grade flame crystal rock. It looks like I guessed right." The few Haotian sect disciples who had rushed over in advance, but did not dare to act rashly because of Wang Qin felt envious when they saw this scene. "You are seeking death." However, Wang Qin was enraged. One superior-grade flame crystal rock was worth more than all the flame crystal rocks he had collected. Wang Qin's whip extended infinitely, looking like a raging venomous black snake as it hacked at Xiao Chen. Holding the flame crystal rock in his left hand, Xiao Chen raised his head slightly and looked at the incoming black whip. Then he stretched out his hand and firmly grasped the whip. When Wang Can, who was on the death throne, saw Xiao Chen grab his whip without letting go, he could not help but mock him. To think that Xiao Chen dares to compete in strength with a corpse race cultivator. He is overestimating himself. Wang Can's steel-like hands pulled back, trying to pull Xiao Chen over. However, Wang Can felt like he was pulling a mountain on the other end of the whip. It did not budge at all. His expression turned slightly unsightly as he asked, "You can't pull it?" Xiao Chen smiled coldly and gently pulled with his right hand. Whoosh! Wang Can, who was on the death throne, flew into the air. In terms of vital qi, Xiao Chen completely surpassed his opponent. The direct disciples from the previous batches who saw this scene from behind undoubtedly inhaled a breath of cold air. Among the 5 clans of the Kunlun realm, the Corpse clan was famous for their strong physical bodies. Even the demon race, who had always boasted of their powerful bodies, was slightly inferior in front of the Corpse race. The Corpse race and the Ghost race both cultivated the great Tao of death among the 5 races of Kunlun. But the direction of their development was completely different. The Corpse race studied the refining methods of all kinds of demonic corpses and demon corpses. They refined the corpses of all kinds of powerful existences. Whether it was the corpses of humans, demons, or spirit beasts, they would not let go of anything. In fact, they would even use the corpse refinement technique on themselves to pursue a realm where they were neither alive nor dead, using their corpses to prove their Tao and become the corpse god. Among the 5 races, they were the least welcomed by the other races. It would be the same no matter who it was. How could a race that was always eyeing one's ancestral graves make one feel at ease? However, even though the Corpse race did not have as many people as the other races, they had been able to survive for tens of thousands of years, and their inheritance had never been destroyed. Of the ancient 100 races, several strong races had vanished like smoke in the long river of history. The Corpse race being able to do this had a lot to do with their monstrous body-tempering cultivation technique. However, a peak half-sage of the Corpse race with an extremely horrifying physical body ended up being pulled out by Xiao Chen. How could anyone not be shocked? Wang Qin showed a startled expression. He had not expected the other party to pull him up while he was distracted. However, Wang Qin reacted quickly and decisively let go. Then he charged at Xiao Chen with a cold gaze. He was very confident in his physical body. Among the cultivators of the same generation, no one could defeat him in close combat. He had just been careless earlier. However, Wang Qin was disappointed. It was not because he had been careless that he lost to Xiao Chen in a competition of physical bodies. Instead, it was because he was truly inferior to Xiao Chen. In terms of physical bodies, Xiao Chen had a rank 2 sage body and consumed many natural treasures. In terms of vital qi, he had more than 1 million tons of force. Bang! 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 The two exchanged 3 moves. Finally, their fists clashed. The moment their fists clashed, Wang Qin was knocked back by Xiao Chen. However, Xiao Chen also felt his fingers go slightly numb. Wang Qin's body seemed to have been separated from flesh and blood, like some kind of divine metal. Raising his eyebrows slightly, Xiao Chen thought to himself, the Corpse race's body tempering technique cannot be underestimated. Although Xiao Chun thought this, he did not stop moving. He casually tossed aside the black whip in his hand and executed Thunder Dragon steps to charge at this person. Xiao Chun had long wanted to experience the experts of other races. If there was an opportunity, it would not be a bad idea to snatch away that death throne. After being knocked back by Xiao Chun's punch, Wang Can was both startled and furious. He somersaulted and sat back down on the death throne. As Wang Can watched Xiao Chun chase after him, the black mark on his forehead flickered. The black clouds under the throne started churning continuously. Sitting on the death throne, Wang Can, who had been in a sorry state earlier, now looked like a sovereign of the night. A decaying aura of death spread out. Wang Can unhurriedly threw a palm strike at the pursuing Xiao Chun. Strands of black smoke came out of the throne. Like tentacles, the black smoke wrapped around Wang Can's palm and extended to his palm, forming the word death. Xiao Chun chased too quickly. Even if Wang Can wanted to retreat, he could not. The instant the word death formed, Wang Can's palms charged forward with explosive vital qi. This palm strike contained more than 1 million kilograms of force. Xiao Chun would be able to crush a mountain. However, Wang Can remained seated on the death throne, not moving at all. However, the black clouds under the throne churned even more intensely. A will of death spread out from Wang Can's palm. Before Xiao Chun could execute the immortal will of thunder, he was knocked back. His qi and blood surged, and hot blood rushed to his head. A black death qi wrapped around Wang Can's palm. His life force quickly faded, and he started rotting at a visible rate. In mere moments, Xiao Chun's smooth and white palm aged rapidly. It was as thin as a stick and filled with cracks. It looked like the palm of an ordinary person in his 70s or 80s, looking very horrifying. That deathly aura was still spreading and rushing upwards. The group of people in the distance was horrified. The will of death was actually this horrifying. Xiao Chun looked at his palm and frowned slightly. However, he did not worry too much. Xiao Chun had an even bigger problem. The mental energy of the massacre throne was like a cocoon in his sea of consciousness. After the other party released the will of death, cracks started to appear in the cocoon, showing signs of breaking free at any moment. Xiao Chun flung his hand, and the immortal will of thunder turned into a thunderfire, slowly eliminating the death qi on his arm. Sizzling sounds rang out, and black smoke came out. Chapter 794. Xiao Chun's lifeless palm immediately regained its luster and recovered to its original state. His fingers were as nimble as before. Wang Can narrowed his eyes and said sullenly, "You comprehended the will of thunder. No wonder you dare to snatch my Wang Can's things. However, if this is your trump card, you still have to die." Xiao Chun did not want to expose the secret of the Scarlet Throne. However, the other party pressed on. He had no choice but to draw the lunar shadow saber and fight. Black clouds churned, and muffled thunderous sounds rang out continuously. Wang Can, who was seated on the throne, charged over with the might of the dead. The two quickly exchanged moves in the starry heavens. As the will of death pressed on, more and more mental energy cracks appeared in Xiao Chun's sea of consciousness. On the Haotian sect's king-grade warship, the two vice palace masters looked into the distance. When they saw this battle, they could not help but frown heavily. That throne seems to have been left by the ancient evil king. Unexpectedly, a descendant of the corpse race managed to obtain it. The throne is split into 7. The corpse race cultivates the Death Tao. It is a perfect match for them to obtain the Death Throne. Xiao Chun is probably in trouble. It is not convenient for the two of us to make a move. I believe the corpse dragon warship of the corpse race is not far away. Let's see how it goes. If Xiao Chun's life is in danger, we will have to make a move even if we don't want to. We can only hope that the other party does not send a king-grade warship. As the two spoke, they steered the warship towards where Xiao Chun and Wang Can fought. At the same time, they brought in the scattered Haotian sect disciples. Their gazes never left Xiao Chun and Wang Can. The moment they sensed that something was wrong, they prepared to make a move. When Wang Can saw the warship flying over and 2 strong superior-grade martial sages, his expression did not change. Every move he made was extremely lethal. Based on the situation, Xiao Chun feared exposing the throne, so he was very conservative. Before the surging Wang Qin, he could only defend. Hand over the superior grade flame crystal rock, and we will end today's matter. Wang Qin felt that he already held the upper hand. The two superior grade martial sages of the Haotian sect were already here. It was impossible to kill Xiaochen, so he could only quit while he was ahead. Gotcha. However, just at this moment, something strange happened. The mental energy wrapped around the scarlet throne in Xiaochen's sea of consciousness shattered. A berserk-killing aura surged out. Under Xiaochen's feet, a red cloud rolled up and down. The blood-colored massacre throne lay quietly on top of it, waiting for its king. The moment the scarlet throne appeared, Wang Qin's expression completely changed. He said somewhat excitedly, "The massacre throne. Ha ha ha. Looks like my luck is extraordinarily good. I actually managed to run into the massacre throne. That's right, your luck is really extraordinary." Now that the secret was exposed, the killing chi on Xiaochen's face finally gathered. His cold voice was like a bone-piercing cold light, causing Wang Qin to feel a chill for some reason. Boom. Xiaochen sat down gently and leaned back on the throne. His soaring aura turned into a red light and rose up. Vaguely, there seemed to be a 30-meter-long golden dragon soaring within the red light. At this moment, the King True Dragon's aura was released together with the state of massacre without any suppression. The horrifying might instantly pushed back Wang Qin's aura, suppressing him to the point that he could not breathe properly. Wang Qin's clothes and hair fluttered wildly behind him. He looked like he was about to fly up. Xiaochen smacked his palm on the armrest, and the will of death in the throne surged and gathered. A black light soared into the sky. The mark on Wang Qin's forehead flickered continuously. The might of the will of death clashed wildly with the might of Xiaochen's massacre true dragon. A strange scene appeared in the boundless starry heavens. Two beams of light, one black and one red, intertwined and formed a cosmic storm. The meteors flying in the surroundings all deviated from their original trajectories and spun around the two. After the secret of the throne was exposed, Xiaochen no longer held back. He combined the state of massacre with the King True Dragon to form a vast might and clashed with Wang Qin, not backing down at all. The purple talisman in Xiaochen's sea of consciousness spun gently, ready to deal a fatal blow at any moment. Wang Qin's swarthy face looked extremely unsightly. I can clearly feel that he has not signed a contract with the existence in the throne. Unable to raise his state to the will of massacre. Why can't my will of death hold the upper hand? Why do I have to work so hard? Furthermore, I even seem to be at a disadvantage. As the auras clashed, the cosmic storm around the two became even more ferocious. Not only could the meteors flying in the surroundings deviate from their trajectories, but the suction it formed even pulled the distant meteors over. More and more meteors gathered. In the blink of an eye, tens of thousands of meteors had gathered. As they spun, they formed a 3-kilometer-tall cluster of meteors. Through the cracks between the meteors, one could see two thrones, one black and one red. They faced each other and spiraled up. The clothes of the two people on the thrones fluttered, and their long hair fluttered. When the two thrones were about to leave the cluster of meteors, the two squinted and stood up at the same time. Kill. Die. Horrifying energy mixed with a boundless aura burst out at the same time. The tens of thousands of meteors instantly turned into dust. The starry heavens churned endlessly, scattering everywhere. The previous true inheritors on the Haotian sect's king-grade warship were all stunned when they saw this magnificent scene. The cluster of meteors turned to dust. Amid the dust, Xiaochen's peak state of massacre combined with the king-grade true dragon chi formed a golden kill character. Boundless black death chi poured out of the throne behind Wang Qin. The horrifying will of death formed a sinister black death character in the air. The two pointed at each other, and the golden kill character and the black death character clashed violently in the starry heavens. A will was a will, after all. It was one level higher than a state. The peak state of massacre combined with the king-grade true dragon chi might be stronger in terms of might and pressure, but there was a huge difference in the destructive power of the two. Pussy eye. The golden kill character scattered, and turned into strands of wandering massacre chi moving around in the starry heavens. Wang Qin revealed a sinister smile on his pitch-black face as he shouted, "Kill! The slightly weakened death character turned into a slender black sword and chopped at Xiao Chen furiously. This was the form of his will, the sword of the dead. At this moment, Wang Can's eyes brimmed with confidence. Although his will of death had lost some of its might due to the clash with the peak state of massacre, it was still a piece of cake. However, it was still a piece of cake for the will of death to defeat the will of energy. Once Wang Can used this sword, he could easily break Xiao Chen's will of thunder. Then he could snatch the massacre throne and advance to an unrivaled half-sage. However, there was always a subtle difference between one's thoughts and reality. Xiao Chen's will of thunder was not an ordinary will of thunder. It was the immortal will of thunder. It was a copy of divine lightning and an immortal talisman. If it were a complete will of death, it might have the advantage of a high-ranked will. It might be able to compete with Xiao Chen's immortal will of thunder. However, how could the will of death, which had exhausted a significant portion of its strength? A purple light flickered on Wang Can's forehead, and the talisman with the immortal talisman on it flickered. Electric light tore through the air, and the black sword instantly exploded into nothing. Wang Can vomited a mouthful of black blood. Before he could do anything, the purple talisman carrying the might of immortal thunder flashed, and gave off a dazzling light in the starry heavens. By the time the electricity stopped, Wang Can had already been sent flying 5 kilometers away. Many large meteors had been turned to dust by him. A bloody hole the size of a bowl had appeared in his chest, and sparks were still flickering non-stop. When Xiao Chen raised his head to take a look, he felt slightly startled. I wonder what material this fellow's physical body is made of. Even the will talisman cannot pierce through it. Xiao Chen could clearly see that Wang Can was not wearing any inner armor or secret treasure. However, this had nothing to do with Xiao Chen. At this moment, Wang Can had already lost his ability to fight, and was no longer a threat to him. Xiao Chen gently pushed off the starry heavens, and arrived before the death throne. A fervent expression appeared in his eyes as he stretched his hand out to grab the throne. Just at this moment, Xiao Chen sensed extreme danger. In the distant starry heavens, 3 black dragon breaths pierced through the starry heavens, heading for Xiao Chen. As long as Xiao Chen made a move to grab the death throne, he would immediately be struck by these dragon breaths. He might be crushed into a bloody mist, dying without a complete corpse. On the Haotian sex warship, the 2 vice palace masters exclaimed in shock, 3 black dragon breaths. It really is a king-grade corpse dragon warship. Xiao Chen, quickly retreat. That is a black dragon breath refined from a true dragon corpse. You cannot block it. The vice palace master on the left quickly sent a voice projection to Xiao Chen, instructing him to retreat. Xiao Chen's face sank. However, he did not intend to give up. He had long expected that there would be a major faction following Wang Can, otherwise he would not have been so afraid of the throne being exposed at the start. Just Wang Can alone would not have made him feel this way. However, now that the throne was exposed, if he left like this, he would not be able to obtain any benefits. Furthermore, he would expose the fact that he had a valuable treasure on him. He would not be satisfied with that. Xiao Chen glanced around, and 2 beams of light, one purple and one white, flashed in his eyes. The lunar true flame and the purple thunder true fire chased each other in the air. In the blink of an eye, they formed a Taiji yin-yang flame diagram with the 8 trigrams, the 4 divisions, and all sorts of profound talisman scripts. The 4 divisions' holy beasts flashed in the Taiji yin-yang flame diagram, forming a complete scene. What is he doing? The vice palace master on the left revealed heavy doubt in his eyes, unable to understand. It's over. The black dragon breath can easily kill an inferior grade martial sage. We do not dare to clash head-on with it. The vice palace master on the right sighed in despair. A golden light flickered, and the Taiji yin-yang flame diagram gave off a bright light. To everyone's astonished gazes, it unexpectedly blocked the 3 dragon breaths. However, it only blocked them for a second. However, this 1 second was enough to do a lot of things. Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and tossed the death throne into his universe ring. Then, electric light erupted under Xiao Chen's feet as he quickly headed for the king-grade warship. The black shock wave surged out in all directions like a wave of death. Meteors silently turned into powder. The shock wave arrived too quickly. Xiaochen could not dodge it completely. He activated the sage-grade pagoda in his chest and formed a pagoda image encasing his body. Chapter 795. The image shattered, and Xiaochen tumbled a few times. Then he vomited a large mouthful of blood. Not daring to look back, Xiaochen pushed off the air and continued flying towards the king-grade warship. "You run pretty fast." A deep voice came from behind Xiaochen. There was a blurry black figure in the distance with black chains tied around its wrists. A horrifying aura came from the black figure, suppressing everyone. This was a ruthless character that Xiaochen could not deal with. Wuxia. Suddenly, a fiery light flew in front of Xiaochen. The figure landed and arrived behind Xiaochen, helping him block his pursuers. It was the Heavenly Battle Palace's palace master, Elder Bai. He held a 1-meter-long scarlet sword surrounded by flames. Then he chopped at the strange black figure. Bang! This sword strike sent the black figure that made Xiaochen feel suffocated. The fiery light spread out, looking very resplendent in the starry heavens. When Xiaochen landed on the deck of the king-grade warship, he clearly saw that the black figure was a demonic corpse that was completely black and as tough as frost iron, without any signs of life. Behind the demonic corpses was an old man from the corpse race holding a long whip. He was facing Elder Bai. When that corpse race old man saw Elder Bai appear, he frowned heavily. A Grandmaster-level martial sage, who comprehended a will arrived. This is going to be problematic. The old man swung the whip in his hand. It seemed to have some magical power, and the demonic corpse with chains around its limbs quickly flew over from a distance and stood guard in front of this person. When one looked carefully, one would discover a 1-meter-long wound on the demonic corpse's chest. No matter what one did, it would not heal. Disgusting liquid continuously poured out of that wound. This was the result of Elder Bai's earlier sword strike. Scram, you thing that is neither human nor ghost. Elder Bai loathed the corpse race. When he saw that demonic corpse, his expression turned terrifyingly sullen as he spoke rudely. When the corpse race old man heard this, he became enraged. However, he could feel the formless light of the will of fire and the thousands of thick heavenly sage laws behind him. He swallowed his words, not daring to say anything more. Elder Bai was a Grandmaster-level martial sage who had comprehended the will of fire to 60% comprehension. As long as the opponent was not a blue-robed emperor, he would not have any misgivings. The corpse race cultivator seemed to have received a voice projection. He said coldly, "Give your clan's junior a reminder. In the future, if there is nothing to do, it is best not to leave the Tianwu domain." After saying that, his figure flashed, and he put away the demonic corpse, preparing to return. Shameless boasting. With a furious roar, Elder Bai pushed the power of his will of fire to the limit. Xiaochen's heavenly sage laws danced wildly behind him as he sent out a 300-meter-tall flaming sword screen. Then he charged over like a surging river. The old man from the corpse clan jumped in fright. This guy had used his full strength when he attacked. Clearly he wanted to kill him. "Save me, rumble." In the starry sky, a cloud of dust dispersed. 3 gigantic corpse dragons were chained together, pulling a black palace. A black-robed old man flew out of the palace. The black-robed old man flew forward and sent out a clump of corpse flame containing the will of death. Then he silently assimilated Elder Bai's flaming sword screen. In an exchange of pointers between the younger generation, "Our skills are inferior. Our corpse god palace has already admitted defeat. There is no need for you to be so overbearing." Elder Bai narrowed his eyes. He saw a small golden corpse sitting cross-legged on the chest of this person's black robes. A light flickered in Elder Bai's eyes. In the end, he snorted coldly and turned to leave. Both sides feared each other and did not dare to make a big move. The chaos caused by the flame crystal stones came to an end, and they left together. "Palace Master, why did they not even want the death throne and just let us go?" The 2 vice palace masters asked, feeling it was strange. The death throne was a treasure left behind by the ancient evil king. It was compatible with their death great Tao. Elder Bai said sullenly, "I believe that the death throne has some other uses. Xiaochen, you had best not place your mark on the death throne." Xiaochen nodded to indicate his understanding. Back then, the massacre throne nearly caused him to fall into the killing Tao, unable to extricate himself. Even without Elder Bai's reminder, Xiaochen would still be cautious about the death throne. What is that? Suddenly, a disciple on the deck pointed to the front and exclaimed. Xiaochen followed that disciple's gaze and saw a completely white palanquin draped in white muslin drifting in the starry heavens in a ghostly manner. It looked very frightening. When one looked carefully, one would discover that the palanquin was not flying on its own. Instead, 8 green spirits were carrying the palanquin, rushing quickly through the starry heavens. 8 ghosts carrying the palanquin. They are martial sage experts of the ghost race. They are chasing in the direction of the corpse dragon warships. Elder Bai had a bad impression of the corpse race and the ghost race. He said in disgust, "There is no need to care about them. Just let them fight each other." The corpse race and the ghost race both cultivated the death great Tao. One collected the corpses of the dead, and the other collected the souls of the dead. They developed in completely different directions. Furthermore, they did not like each other. Battles often broke out between the corpse race and the ghost race. There were countless cases of them undermining each other. Hence, the appearance of this ghost palanquin was not too surprising to Elder Bai and the other two. However, Xiaochen was very interested in that ghost palanquin. His spiritual sense chased after it for a long time. If Xiaochen guessed right, the master of the corpse dragon warship might have given up on the death throne temporarily, because of the ghost palanquin in hot pursuit. Suddenly, the curtains of the ghost palanquin parted. Xiaochen clearly saw the appearance of a delicate person. He could not help but be startled and take a step back involuntarily. There was clearly a female ghost sitting in the ghost palanquin with a long tongue sticking out. Her eyes were like black holes, and blood flowed out of her 7 orifices. When Xiaochen looked carefully, he discovered that what he saw earlier was just an illusion. The female ghost had vanished. A girl with fair skin and a cold expression in a red dress smiled meaningfully at Xiaochen before closing the curtains again. This mysterious ghost race girl was startling. Her skin was as white as snow. Her face was cold and emotionless, and her long hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. However, she was shockingly beautiful. This mysterious woman from the ghost clan was the epitome of the word shocking. Did she notice the death throne in her hand? Xiaochen took a few steps back. He still could not calm down. The huge contrast startled him. "Xiaochen, are you all right?" The one who spoke was Cui Hao. In the earlier battle, Xiaochen had saved his life. Cui Hao was not a petty person in the first place. After receiving this favor, his resentment for Xiaochen lessened significantly. Xiaochen recovered his wits and smiled. "I'm fine. My foot slipped." Elder Bai, who was in front, turned his head back and gave Xiaochen a deep look. Then he said, "Come with me." The other party's gaze made Xiaochen feel uncertain. He muttered to himself as he followed the other party. They entered the warship's hold, and continued walking until they reached the highest floor of the warship. The top floor had windows on all sides. No matter where one looked, one would be able to see the boundless charm of the boundless astral world. "Have a seat." This old man apologizes on behalf of the 2 vice palace masters for exposing the secret of the massacre throne. Elder Bai said sincerely as he extended his hand and made an inviting gesture. Earlier, Xiaochen had refused to leave the warship. Elder Bai had noticed this. After some analysis, he figured out the true reason. Based on what happened later, he could easily figure out the real reason after a slight analysis. Xiaochen sat down and said, "Palace Master is too polite. The matters of the world are hard to predict. This junior did not suffer any losses. The injuries I suffered are still bearable. Furthermore, I obtained the death throne." Although there was a slim chance of survival, it was still a fortuitous encounter. Elder Bai sighed gently and smiled bitterly. "You are oversimplifying things. This is not a fortuitous encounter but a calamity, a great calamity. The evil king was a famous sovereign martial emperor during the ancient era. Even grandmaster-level martial sages would be tempted by the throne he left behind. If I did not see wrong earlier, the ghost race girl in the white palanquin noticed you as well. The 2 sides definitely have important matters to attend to. Once they deal with these trivial matters, They will definitely send their experts to find you and retrieve the Death Throne as well as the Massacre Throne. When the Scarlet Throne was forced to be exposed, Xiaochen had already expected such a thing. Elder Bai's analysis was within his expectations, so he waited quietly for the rest. When we return to the Haotian Star this time, I will help you find a Wu clone of the Sect Master to protect your life at a crucial moment. Indeed, the Haotian sect would not ignore such a situation. Xiaochen raised his hand and said, "Many thanks, Elder Bai." Elder Bai smiled gently and said, "Perhaps I am exaggerating. Even if the ghost race and the corpse race know that you have two thrones, they will not spread the news. The two races both wanted to obtain the thrones. If they spread the news and other experts found out, it would undoubtedly make it more difficult for him to obtain the thrones." Xiaochen thought about the girl in the 8-ghost palanquin. He asked, "Palace Master, what is the background of the girl in the 8-ghost palanquin?" Even the two vice palace masters were shocked to see her. Elder Bai thought for a while before replying, "That white palanquin looks ordinary. In reality, it is a famous secret treasure of the ghost race. Its owner is the Ghost Empress Shisun, an expert on the same level as Emperor Wu. However, based on the person in the palanquin, he should be her descendant or disciple. However, for her to bestow this secret treasure to her, her talent is definitely not low." As the two chatted, Elder Bai used this topic to explain some things about the ghost race and the corpse race to Xiaochen. In terms of individual strength, the ghost race and the corpse race were far ahead of the 5 major races of the Kunlun realm. However, the two races cultivated the Death Great Tao. One hooked souls, and the other dug graves. What they did went against the heavenly Tao. Hence, the population of the two races could not develop. The distribution of power in the ghost domain and the corpse domain was not as complicated as that of the human race and the fiend race. They only had one sect, the Corpse God Palace and the Spirit Palace. Although there were conflicts between factions, they were much better than the human race and the fiend race, far less complicated than the human race and the fiend race. The two races normally kept a low profile. Of the two races, the ghost race was the most mysterious. The ghost race cultivators were born with yin-yang eyes, which allowed them to see all sorts of wandering souls invisible to the naked eye. Chapter 796. Rumor had it that the headquarters of the Netherworld Palace was located in the Nine Hells Purgatory, and that there was a grand formation there that could draw in the souls of dead people. Of course, rumors were just rumors. The Nine Hells of Purgatory was a forbidden land of the Kunlun realm. It was buried more than 90,000 kilometers underground. Aside from the Nether River that flowed to the land of Absolute Yin, there were all sorts of terrifying scenes. Even Emperor Wu didn't dare to barge in recklessly. There were many unsolved mysteries that he still couldn't find the answers to. As they spoke, a resplendent and charming star appeared in Xiaochen's vision. With just a glance, he was deeply captivated. Compared to the surrounding dark and lifeless dead stars, this star's charm was simply too great, even though it was too far away to be seen clearly. However, it made one instinctively feel a throbbing from the bottom of one's heart. It had an indescribable attraction. Is this the human emperor planet? Bushan Palace's stronghold in the starry sky. I wonder which ancient senior had the power to transform such a huge star. Xiaochen had noticed the star in the jade pendant on his chest. Now that he saw it with his own eyes, he immediately recognized it. It was refined by the Dragon's Gate's Qing Emperor 50,000 years ago. He modified a dead star single-handedly, turning it into the vibrant state it is now. When Elder Bai mentioned the Dragon Sect Qing Emperor, his eyes naturally revealed a trace of reverence. Many sects could build a stronghold in the starry sky, but that was only to open up a base in a certain part of a star. It was impossible to transform an entire star. Compared to the human emperor star, there was a world of difference. Of course, the human sovereign planet was much smaller than the Kunlun continent. However, it had been completely transformed into an ancient planet with life. Every place on the planet was suitable for human habitation. Even ordinary mortals could survive here. Xiaochen's eyes were filled with shock. He had originally thought that it was refined and transformed by the ancient human race. He didn't expect that it was transformed by the Qing Emperor from 10,000 years ago. You must be very shocked, right? During the ancient era, the Kunlun continent was rich in resources. There are all sorts of ancient ruins, immortal cities, and cave abodes. Coupled with the fact that the various races are often at war with each other, very few ancient almighties would think of establishing a stronghold in space. Elder Bai continued, the true exploration of the starry heavens started after the War of Emperors in the savage battlefield. This matter is closely related to the deep abyss demonic world. What's the connection? Xiao Chen's interest was piqued and he asked curiously. After the War of Emperors, the Kunlun realm declined. The situation of the peak of the martial epic never appeared again. The demon world's ambition to regain control of Kunlun is also growing day by day. They opened up a distant heavenly road in the boundless starry sky. After working hard for 10,000 years, they finally killed their way over from the other side of the starry sky. In the past, the invasion of the demon realm could only come through the spatial rift between the two realms. However, spatial cracks only existed for a short period of time, and there were spatial storms around, so opening them was not easy. Not many people would come. Although the demonic tribulation would be terrifying, it would not be a disaster. As long as Emperor Wu held down the fort, they would be able to ensure the safety of the region. This was nothing in the eyes of the powerhouses. However, at that time, the ones who descended from the starry sky and broke through the barrier of the sky was the demonic world's army. The 18 demon monarchs personally arrived, deeply shocking the various races of the Kunlun realm. Although the Kunlun realm managed to obtain victory after much difficulty, several ancient races died in the war. After this war, the various races of the Kunlun realm thoroughly realized the importance of the starry sky. Aside from obtaining resources, defending against the demon world's invasion was also of utmost importance. In the distant depths of the starry sky, there was a vast astral battlefield. On the other side of the astral battlefield, the demon world's base in the starry sky could not be truly eliminated. Sometimes, the demonic world held the advantage, leaping across the astral battlefield and forcing back the various races of the Kunlun realm. During the most dangerous times, they even pushed back to the barrier of the sky. Sometimes, the Kunlun realm held the advantage, leaping across the astral battlefield and nearly killing all the demons on the other side. The current situation was a stalemate. That kind of endless war in the starry sky had not happened for 10,000 years already. The astral battlefield became the peak experiential training ground for the junior generation experts of the Kunlun realm and the demonic world. Without advancing to martial sage, one would not even be qualified to enter. The astral battlefield was the strongest experiential training ground in this universe. Without advancing to martial sage, one would not even be qualified to enter. When Xiao Chen heard this, he could not help but feel his blood surge. However, he could only think about it for now. To him, it was still too far away. In the vacuum of the universe, there was no air. If one wanted to travel through the starry sky, they would need to circulate their veritable essence energy at every moment, which was very taxing. A regular inferior grade martial sage would not be able to remain in the starry sky for long. At most, they would be able to last a month before they had to find a place to recover. Otherwise, they would end up as desiccated corpses, forever lost in the universe. There was no distinction between night and day in the darkness. Xiao Chen had no idea how much time had passed. When Xiao Chen returned to the deck, he felt that about 1 day had passed. Then the Haotian Sect's King-grade warship stopped on a star with a diameter of 1,500 kilometers. This star was only 1,500 kilometers in diameter. It had to be said that this star was indeed very small. At the very least, with Xiao Chen's speed, he could easily make a round trip if he did not run into any danger. The warship stopped beside a black mountain range. The surroundings were desolate, filled with black soil. When Xiao Chen stepped on it, he felt a strong gravity. This somewhat overturned his previous understanding of the starry sky. It looked like he could not apply the knowledge of the starry sky of his previous life to the starry sky of this world. Not far from the mountain range was a long, winding black river. The river was pitch black. As it was too far away, the naked eye could not see what was flowing. Blackwater Star was named after this river. There was a forest on the other side of the river. Thick black clouds drifted endlessly above the forest, making it look very mysterious. Be careful. I will go and collect the spirit vein. Split into 2 teams, each with a vice palace master leading the team to kill astral beasts. Do not leave the team, Elder Bai said with an extremely grave expression after gathering everyone together. Of the 100-odd people, there was a team of 50. Each team had a vice palace master leading the way. The 2 vice palace masters were roughly equal in strength. Hence, there was no saying who would be safer. Xiao Chun and Cui Hao were split into the same team. Since the 2 of them were stronger, the vice palace masters arranged for them to be at the back in case of any mishaps. I really couldn't tell. This is your first time entering the starry sky, yet you are not nervous at all. Along the way, the 2 slowly grew familiar with each other. Cui Hao voiced the doubts in his heart. Xiao Chun did not feel anything. This was his nature. He could easily adapt to any environment. Furthermore, even if he was nervous, he would not show it on his face. Changing the topic, Xiao Chun asked, "How strong are the astral beasts? With your strength, can you kill them alone?" Cui Hao revealed a grave expression and said, "There are many types of astral beasts. They are roughly divided into ranks, from rank 1 to rank 6. A rank 1 astral beast is as strong as a half-sage. A rank 2 astral beast is as strong as a martial sage. A rank 3 astral beast is as strong as a medial grade martial sage. A rank 4 astral beast is as strong as a superior grade martial sage. A rank 5 astral beast is comparable to a grandmaster level martial sage. As for a rank 6 astral beast, only the blue-robed emperor can deal with it. As for me, I can deal with a regular rank 1 astral beast alone. However, if I run into a powerful one, I will have to be careful. Otherwise, I might even lose my life." Unexpectedly, the lowest ranked astral beast was as strong as a half-sage. This was truly flabbergasting. Xiao Chun said, "Only rank 6? Don't tell me there are no astral beasts above rank 6? Cui Hao smiled and said, "Naturally there are. However, astral beasts above rank 6 are simply too horrifying. They can swallow up a star in one gulp, and are known as destroyers. We will not be able to find them in this starry domain. We will have to go even deeper to find them. Furthermore, only the Emperor Wu can deal with them." As they were chatting, Xiao Chun suddenly stopped. He fixed his gaze on a sharp black rock at the back of the group. The black rock was 1 meter tall, and had an irregular cylindrical shape. As it moved from the bottom to the top, it slowly became thinner and sharper at the top. Cui Hao asked, "What's wrong?" Xiao Chun waved his hand, indicating for Cui Hao to move aside. Then he walked over to the sharp black rock, and reached out to grab the hard rock. "Rise!" All the energy in his body surged as Xiao Chun shouted. Then he grabbed the top of the rock and pulled. More than 1 million kilograms of force burst out. Rumble. Cracks appeared on the ground. Following that, the rock shattered and flew into the air, shooting out in all directions. The entire ground shook violently. Everyone scatter. The vice palace master in front shouted. The 50-odd people in the group reacted very quickly. They pushed off the ground and shot out. Cui Hao's expression changed slightly. What Xiao Chun lifted was not a rock. It was clearly the tail of an astral beast. That astral beast was 300 meters long. It looked like a huge crocodile. However, its skin was covered in sharp black rocks, looking horrifyingly hard. Black rock crocodile. An ordinary rank 2 astral beast. Its strength is equal to an inferior grade martial sage. It is very good at hiding its aura and can travel underground freely. Someone recognized this astral beast, and was extremely astonished. If Xiao Chun had not fished it out in advance, someone would have been injured or eaten by this black rock crocodile. Xiao Chun grabbed the 20-meter-long tail of the black rock crocodile, and leaped into the air. Then he lifted this huge creature and swung it wildly in the air. Bang! 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 As Xiao Chun swung the black rock crocodile, he descended to the ground and smashed the huge body of the black rock crocodile into the ground. This repeated over and over, causing the ground to rumble. The rocky skin of the black rock crocodile fell off piece by piece. It tried to use the force of its tail to fling Xiaochen away several times, but it did not succeed. Instead, Xiaochen flung the black rock crocodile into the ground continuously. As he burned his vital qi, he used 1,100,000 kilograms of force to toy with this rank 2 astral beast. The group of people was dumbfounded. Was this still a horrifying rank 2 astral beast? Why was it like a toy in Xiaochen's hands? The vice palace master was also slightly stunned. As far as he knew, the black rock crocodile was not only very strong but also very capable. Chapter 797. However, after Xiaochen grabbed its tail and refused to let it go, it could not do anything. Xiaochen swung the black rock crocodile to the ground, not giving it a chance to move at all. The black rock crocodile let out a horrifying shriek, rumbling endlessly. Everyone watched as Xiaochen twirled the black rock crocodile around like a whip. For some reason, sympathy welled up in everyone's heart. That black rock crocodile was really unlucky. After a long time, the black rock crocodile's shrieks grew softer and softer. Finally, there was no sound. Suddenly, Xiaochen felt the black rock crocodile's hard tail loosen. A group of previous true inheritors exclaimed, "What a freak!" They quickly flew over to take a look. They saw that the black rock crocodile was badly mangled, no different from mud. If they had not seen it before, they would not have been able to tell that this was a rank 2 astral beast, the black rock crocodile. It was as strong as an inferior grade martial sage. When Cui Hao flew over, he was speechless. An astral beast actually died just like that. He smiled bitterly and said, "Xiaochen, go and see if there is an astral core." Any astral beast could fly freely in the starry heavens. By absorbing the energy of the universe, they had a chance of producing an extremely precious energy crystal core. An astral core. Xiaochen scanned the pile of flesh and blood with his spiritual sense twice. Then he discovered a crystal core with extremely dense energy. Joy appeared on his face as he stretched out his hand. A suction came out, and a white astral core appeared in Xiaochen's hand. The eyes of the others lit up, revealing envious expressions. They said, "Unexpectedly, an astral core appeared. This Xiaochen is really lucky." Although the white astral core is an inferior grade astral core, it is more than enough to sell for a few thousand black astral coins. When Xiaochen heard the discussions of the surrounding people, he carefully put away the astral core. He asked, "Black astral coins? Cui Hao, what is a black astral coin?" Cui Hao also had a somewhat envious expression in his eyes. He explained, "Black astral coins are essentially the same as astral coins. However, they contain denser astral iron, and are worth even more. All the large trading centers in the starry heavens use black astral coins for transactions. However, your luck is really good. The chances of an astral core appearing in a rank 2 astral beast and below are pitifully low. This black rock crocodile is just an ordinary rank 2 astral beast." As soon as they set off, Xiaochen already had such a harvest. For the rest of the journey, the true inheritors of the previous batches all rubbed their eyes and searched for hidden astral beasts. He managed to find several astral beasts. After a few battles, he managed to kill quite a few astral beasts. However, none of them had condensed an astral core. Upon seeing this, the Vice Hall Master smiled without saying a word. Along the way, he was like a spectator, neither pointing out the hidden astral beasts, nor lending a helping hand. He allowed the group of disciples to freely fight the astral beast. The unknown black lava flowed downstream in the riverbed. From time to time, bubbles would appear and float out. When the bubbles burst, there would be violent explosions. The entire riverbed was covered in such bubbles. A heavy smell of sulfur spread in the air, making everyone frown. This river was the Black Water River that Xiaochen and the others saw in the distance. What flowed in this river was not water, but this somewhat disgusting lava filled with intense energy. The group of 50 killed all sorts of astral beasts along the way and finally arrived at the riverbank. When they saw this scene, they were not very surprised. After all, anything could happen in the boundless starry heavens. A river flowing with black lava was not something strange or incomprehensible. The Vice Hall Master looked around before fixing his gaze on the black forest on the other side of the river. Xiao Chun Cui Hao, I'll leave this place to you. I'll make a trip to the forest and be back soon. After saying that, his figure gently drifted over the wide black river and headed for the black forest, slowly disappearing from everyone's sight. Clearly, this was not Cui Hao's first time dealing with this matter. After giving some instructions to his fellow disciples, he returned. Along the way, the group had not fought many battles. However, they were still somewhat fatigued. So they closed their eyes to rest or chatted idly. Their tones were filled with anticipation. Xiao Chun looked at the black forest. If he did not guess wrong, the Vice Hall Master should have gone in to hunt astral beasts of rank 3 and above. The Vice Hall Master left only astral beasts of rank 2 and below. Then he let the group of people in and left them alone. Based on the fact that the Vice Hall Master did not run into any rank 3 astral beasts along the way, it was easy to figure this out. Indeed, not long later, sharp roars came from that black forest. Clearly, an intense battle was taking place. When we enter that black forest tomorrow, we should fight on our own, Cui Hao said as he tossed out a flask of wine, sitting across from Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun caught the flask of wine and took a swig. Then he asked, "How long have you been in the Heavenly Battle Palace? It looks like you are already very familiar with this experiential training." Cui Hao took a sip of wine and smiled somewhat disappointedly. "It has been about 10 years. The experiential training is usually like this. They hunt down astral beasts that can kill us in an instant. Then they scatter us and toss us in to fight on our own." 10 years sounded like a long period of time, but in Cui Hao's eyes, he didn't see many traces of time. Given Cui Hao's talent, he could definitely advance to Martial Sage before the age of 50. After advancing to Martial Sage, his lifespan would increase to 500 years. 10 years was indeed nothing in the long years that followed. However, at this moment, Cui Hao's expression appeared somewhat gloomy, looking very lonely. "Xiao Chun, what is the Tianwu domain like now? Have you heard of these people?" Suddenly, Cui Hao changed the topic, asking a question that had nothing to do with the experiential training. He mentioned several names, asking if Xiao Chun knew them. Every time Cui Hao mentioned a name, Xiao Chun would shake his head, indicating that he had not heard of them. When Cui Hao heard that, the originally gloomy expression in his eyes turned even more sorrowful. Only when Cui Hao mentioned a name did Xiao Chun answer, "And Juanxi. This person is very incredible now. He fought to a draw with the divine martial gates Feng Wuji, and became the new holy scion of the Tianwu domain. He is now the most famous demonic genius." When Cui Hao heard this, he was stunned at first. Then he burst out laughing. He laughed somewhat crazily. He took a big gulp of wine and said, "The waves of the river are endless. 10 years ago, the glorious and brilliant young talents were unrivaled. I did not expect that 10 years later, no one would know of them." Xiao Chun suddenly understood. It looked like the names that Cui Hao mentioned were incredible people back then, comparable to the 7 giants of today. They were all glorious and famous. Unfortunately, the age of geniuses had arrived. These names, which could have been passed down for generations, were overshadowed by the radiance of the later generations. The more tragic ones became the stepping stones for others. During ordinary times, becoming a half-sage at the age of 30 was already a startling matter. However, in this age of geniuses, they were just ordinary geniuses, unable to cause any ripples. Of the 7 giants, which one of them did not become a half-sage before the age of 30? They killed the older generation half-sage evil cultivators like they were pigs or dogs. Although they were full of lofty sentiments and lofty aspirations, the waves at the front did not have the time to express their aspirations before they were smashed to death by the waves at the back on the beach. Furthermore, it was the kind of ruthless stride that surpassed them, leaving them so far behind that their backs could not be seen. The peak of the age of geniuses only regretted being born at the wrong time, coming too early. To the cultivators who pursued the great Tao for thousands of years, this was truly a kind of sorrow. Outsiders would not be able to understand that sorrow. And Juanxi. 10 years ago, that brat could not even last 100 moves against me. Now even the mythical Holy Sun cannot subdue him. After Cui Hao finished the wine in the flask, he poured it a few times. When he discovered that there was no water left, he casually tossed the wine flask into the surging black water. With a bang, it shattered into pieces. Xiaochen remained silent. No wonder Cui Hao lost his composure when he heard that Jiuanxi had such accomplishments. It turned out that there was such a secret behind it. Cui Hao glanced at the previous true inheritors not far away, resting with their eyes closed. He said, "Xiaochen, did you know? If nothing unexpected happens, most of the people in the Heavenly Battle Palace will advance to martial sage before the age of 100. In ordinary times, becoming a martial sage before the age of 100 might not be considered an absolute genius, but they will definitely become an overlord. After entering the Heavenly Battle Palace, these people all have all sorts of dreams in their hearts. However, you came and shattered all these dreams." Feeling suspicious, Xiaochen asked, "Me? Actually, I have to thank you for coming early. Otherwise, if a large group of people came, it would have been even more unbearable." Although they have always been in the Heavenly Battle Palace, they know a little about the Age of Geniuses. They more or less guessed the ending. Your arrival only woke them up, Cui Hao said in a somewhat sullen voice. Cui Hao said in a low voice. Although he was talking about them, whether he admitted it or not, Cui Hao was indeed one of the people who had been beaten awake. This time, the two chatted for a long time. Cui Hao talked about the geniuses and outstanding talents of his generation, the names of those who had been outstanding in their time. Xiaochen also talked about the current Tianwu domain, about the 7 giants who were undefeatable, about the demonic geniuses like the sovereign noble clans Yan Shisan, and about the various outstanding talents of the Tianwu domain. In the end, Cui Hao drank too much and slowly fell asleep, leaving only Xiaochen to talk. Xiaochen spoke of his own story, his experiences along the way. He recalled many things and remembered many people's names. These names were once famous existences in the Sky Dome realm. Now no one knew where they were. No one knew if they would rise up again one day. Toward the end, Xiaochen suddenly understood something. The problem that perplexed him not long ago suddenly became clear. For the Purple Thunder Divine Incantation to break through from the 6th layer to the 7th layer, one had to undergo a lightning tribulation and a heart tribulation. Furthermore, if one was not careful, one would die, turning into ashes. At that time, Xiaochen was indeed afraid. He was afraid of losing. He was afraid that after he died, he would have nothing. He was afraid that the fame that he had worked so hard for would be gone in an instant. Xiaochen thought too highly of himself. He worried that after he turned into dust, he would be forgotten by the later generations. Hence he felt afraid. Chapter 798. However, when one looked up at the starry heavens, there were countless stars. Even the most resplendent solar star would die of old age one day. In the past, Cui Hao had been very spirited as well. However, in less than 10 years he became unknown. His glorious name faded with the wind. What did he, Xiaochen, count for? Even if time passed and he reached the peak of the great Tao, someone would eventually surpass him after tens of thousands of years. The river surged, and the waves were merciless. No one could stand at the peak forever. The peak was meant to be surpassed in the first place. With a panoramic view of the starry heavens, the expression in Xiaochen's eyes became increasingly clear and bright. I don't care what others think of me 10,000 years from now. In this life, I will do my best to reach the peak and fight for the first rank. Even if I die, I will have no regrets. The next day, the Vice Palace Master returned from the Black Forest, reeking of blood. The cultivators who were either resting with their eyes closed or chatting idly all had grave expressions. Everyone knew that this trial was about to truly begin. The Heavenly Battle Palace's experiential training had always been cruel. People like the Vice Palace Master would not help you. You had to deal with all the difficulties and dangers yourself. Unless there was an astral beast that could instantly kill a cultivator appeared. Only in such a cruel fight could one truly bring out one's potential. Only then could one truly achieve the experiential training's purpose. Otherwise, everyone knew that no matter what, they would not face the threat of death. They would feel that they had a path of retreat, and would never be able to bring out their full potential. I have already slaughtered all the rank 3 astral beasts. I have also killed some of the peak rank 2 ferocious astral beasts that can instantly kill you. The rest will depend on yourselves. The Vice Palace Master said sullenly as he swept his gaze over the group of 50-odd people. This was not the first time the previous true inheritors had participated in such an experiential training, so they were mentally prepared. All of them soared into the air and revealed a murderous intent in their eyes. Then, they silently headed for the Black Forest. Xiao Chun followed the crowd and carefully entered the Black Forest, starting his first small-scale experiential training in the starry heavens. The high-grade astral beasts in the forest had already been killed. To Xiao Chun, this was not really dangerous. In fact, it was rather ordinary. However, hunting astral beasts also gave Xiao Chun an opportunity to practice the Lightning Tribulation Saber technique. The brand-new Lightning Tribulation Saber technique required intense battles to accumulate familiarity. 3 days later, some of the injured disciples were forced to withdraw helplessly. They dragged their blood-stained bodies to the Vice Hall Master to treat their injuries. With each passing day, a large number of disciples would emerge from the forest. Most of the people had gained something. A few of them even discovered ores in the forest that were no less valuable than the flame crystal stones, causing them to smile happily. There were also some people who were barely alive when they walked out, chased by the astral beasts into a sorry state. 6 days later, only Xiao Chun and Cui Hao were left in the team of 50 people. On the other side of the Blackwater River, one could see the occasional flickering of lightning in the forest. There was also the drifting yellow moonlight. Clearly, Xiao Chun and Cui Hao still had energy to spare. However, around dusk, Cui Hao came out with a joyful expression. When the others asked around, they found out that Cui Hao had obtained 2 astral cores in this experiential training. This was a great harvest, so they all felt envious. 8 days later, 100 bolts of berserk electric pythons suddenly shot out from the Black Forest and soared into the sky. They were 100 purple electric pythons. Under the observation of the previous true inheritors, they all transformed at the same time, turning from pythons into flood dragons. They roared ferociously at the boundless starry heavens, giving off a bright light that tore through the sky. Cui Hao's expression changed. He muttered, "It looks like his lightning tribulation saber technique improved again." The instant the electric light vanished, a white figure appeared in the sky above the forest, quickly descending towards the place where everyone was gathered. Soon, Xiao Chun gently floated down, holding the lunar shadow saber as he slowly landed. When the Vice Palace Master saw the withdrawn killing chi and calm expression in Xiao Chun's eyes, he vaguely felt that Xiao Chun was somewhat unfathomable. After the experiential training ended, the 2 teams met up. The other team had been waiting for a long time already. After everyone was gathered, the King-grade warship started its return journey. The journey back to planet Haotian was very smooth. They did not run into any ghost race or corpse race cultivators. 1 day later, they arrived safely at planet Haotian. Xiao Chun collected the deep-sea coumarin grass and the spiritual milk to recover quintessence. Then he returned to the Heaven Series training room. There was less than half a month left in the Heaven Series training room. Xiao Chun did not want to waste any more time. After resting for a while, Xiao Chun entered deep thought. Then he started to count his gains on this trip. With a flip of his hand, 2 flame crystal rocks appeared in his palm. One had a dim luster, and the other had a moving glow. The flame crystal rocks were of great help to cultivators of the state of fire. However, they were not very useful to Xiao Chun. However, absorbing these 2 flame crystal rocks had a high chance of directly comprehending the state of fire, saving him a lot of effort. After thinking for a while, Xiao Chun finally decided not to sell this flame crystal rock. Perhaps he might be able to use it in the future. This was a treasure that could only be found and not sought. Once he sold it, he would have to spend several times the price to buy it again. After that, Xiao Chun took out 2 white astral cores. After obtaining an inferior grade astral core from the Black Rock Crocodile, he continued his experiential training in the Black Forest. After killing more than 200 rank 2 astral beasts, he finally obtained another astral core. The astral core contained horrifying energy. Xiao Chun could clearly feel it. If this energy exploded, even his physical body would not be able to endure it. In the starry heavens, astral cores had many uses. Not only could they be embedded in all sorts of spirit weapons, but they could also be used as the energy source of all sorts of warships. In fact, if one were to use it directly and cause it to explode, they could even injure their enemies. However, no one would be so wasteful as to use such a precious treasure. Xiao Chen looked at the lunar shadow saber in his hand. This saber was a heaven-ranked spirit weapon. Most sovereign noble clan scions or powerful demonic geniuses would have weapons of the same grade as subdivine weapons. And Juanxi's true dragon lightning whip, First Senior Sister's purple bow, Yin Shisan's heavenly ice sword, and the inherited holy weapons of the three holy masters were all of the same grade. A good weapon could greatly increase a cultivator's strength. Previously, Juanxi did not have a suitable weapon, which was why he could not defeat the divine martial gate's Feng Wuji. It was time for the lunar shadow saber to be upgraded. The demonic cores embedded in it could no longer keep up. They had to be replaced with high-ranked astral cores. The other materials needed to be replaced. Xiao Chun withdrew his gaze and said softly, "I have to advance to martial sage as soon as possible. No time is too tight." The resources and materials needed to upgrade the lunar shadow saber to a subdivine weapon would definitely be vast. If he did not advance to martial sage, he would not be able to find so many resources. The opportunity to advance to martial sage lay in the breaking sage pill. It looked like after obtaining the heavenly dew divine spring, he had to make a trip to the Ying clan. Xiao Chen collected his thoughts and finally took out the death throne. This was an absolute treasure that everyone loved and hated at the same time. A light flashed on Xiao Chen's forehead as he stared at the throne floating in the air. After a while, he finally made up his mind. Xiao Chen focused his vast spiritual sense on the purple lightning talisman. With a flash of electric light, he entered a world of death filled with black qi. Xiao Chen's spiritual sense turned into a body. He held the purple lightning talisman in his right hand as he looked calmly at the vast, boundless black death qi below. It looked like the world within the massacre throne. However, the scarlet sea was now black. Ha! To think that you actually dared to come in. This is my world. No one can escape. The black sea churned, and a strand of black qi came out of it. Then it formed Wang Can's appearance. He looked at Xiao Chen's spiritual sense with a sinister gaze. Wang Can's eyes were filled with boundless arrogance and insufferably arrogance, preparing to swallow up Xiao Chen's spiritual sense. However, when he saw the purple talisman in Xiao Chen's hand, this strand of Wang Can's spiritual mark was greatly startled. Horror appeared in his eyes as he thought of something. Then he quickly dove into the sea below. Lightning was the most berserk and tyrannical energy in the world. Of all the energies, it dealt the greatest damage to evil mental bodies. Without this copy of the divine lightning and the immortal lightning talisman, Xiao Chen would not have been so careless to send his spiritual sense into the death throne. Xiao Chen remained expressionless as he pointed at Wang Can's spiritual mark. The purple talisman flew out and struck it before it dove into the Black Sea. Immediately, miserable shrieks rang out in this strange world. All sorts of hateful curses surged towards Xiao Chen like the tide. Xiao Chen did not care about them. He let the purple lightning talisman strike the other party until his body and soul were destroyed, completely disappearing from this world. After searching for a while and confirming that he could not find Wang Can's spiritual mark, Xiao Chen stretched out his hand and retrieved the purple lightning talisman. However, Xiao Chen's expression did not relax at all. Wang Can's spiritual mark was just an insignificant existence in the death throne. The truly powerful one was in the depths of this boundless sea. That was an existence that made Xiao Chen feel fear. In the past, when he was on the massacre throne, he had suffered a lot from that existence's torture and torment. In a king-grade corpse dragon warship on the ancient starry heavens path, Wang Can paled and vomited a large mouthful of black blood. He said somewhat weakly, "Father, that person destroyed my spiritual mark in the death throne." The person Wang Can addressed as father was the expert with the golden corpse embroidered on his chest, who had blocked Elder by with a wave of his hand. This person smiled faintly and said unconcernedly, "This is for the best. You have not been able to subdue the evil king's mark in the death throne. If you hold on to it for a long time, it will be a hidden danger." Wang Can's expression changed. He asked, "Father, what do you mean?" Wang Can's father said sullenly, "His immortal will of thunder has a natural counter to this kind of spiritual mark. It might be able to completely destroy the death mark that the evil king left. At that time, you will obtain the complete death throne and become a powerful corpse king. If you can subdue the massacre throne as well, you will definitely be world-shaking." After Wang Can heard that, he could not help but reveal an excited expression. Chapter 799. The Black Sea roared ferociously in the world inside the throne. There seemed to be a boundless abyss in the distance, looking at Xiao Chen emotionlessly. Immortal scripts slowly flowed on the purple lightning talisman in Xiao Chen's hand, flickering with a faint golden light. Electricity crackled. Xiao Chen looked into the distance and entered deep thought. Massacre and death were one in the first place. Without massacre, there would be no death. Massacre was the method, and death was the result. The two were related to the beginning and the end. From a certain point of similarity, they should be the same state. With such a common state, Xiao Chen thought of reincarnation. The end did not mean the end. However, the state that reincarnation represented was very vast. It was not something that could be combined with massacre and death. Xiao Chen could only be sure of the answer after he collected the other 5 thrones. The others only focused on a single attribute of the throne. The corpse race and the ghost race wanted the death throne because it was compatible with the death Tao that they cultivated. They could better control corpses and ghosts, greatly increasing their strength. However, Xiao Chen thought even further. Of course, his answer might not be correct. When the 7 thrones merged, it did not represent reincarnation. It was the primal chaos, eternal life, or nothingness. No one could say for sure. Xiao Chen stared at the farthest part of the sea. In the end, he gave up on making a move. Ordinary people only needed to focus on one state to become a powerful expert. Right now, Xiao Chen had not even completely grasped the massacre Tao. If he tried to cultivate the death Tao, he would be seeking his own death. It was like an ant overestimating itself and trying to eat an elephant. Xiao Chen's spiritual sense flashed, and he leaped out. His vision returned to the real world. With a flip of his hand, he placed the death throne in his universe ring. If he could collect all 7 thrones in the future, he might be able to cultivate an unprecedented peak state. In less than half a month, the Sage War, which would determine the spots for the Heavenly Dew Divine Spring, would begin. He had to make good use of the Heaven Series training room. The pressure in the combat room increased. Ignoring his fatigue and hard work, Xiao Chen continued to stabilize his new lightning tribulation saber technique, bringing it closer to himself. 5 days later, when the spiritual milk ran out, Xiao Chen dragged his injured body to the cultivation room. Then he frantically absorbed the spiritual energy of the spirit vein's origin under the prayer mat. Soon, the last day of the Heaven Series training room arrived. Xiao Chen took out the energy crystal of Emperor Wu's will clone. After activating the energy crystal, an old man made of light instantly appeared in the combat room of the Heaven Series training room. The old man's aura did not look very strong. At the very least, Xiao Chen did not feel any pressure. The will clone sealed in this crystal looks like it only has 1/100th or 1,000th of a martial emperor's strength. However, it should still have its combat experience and techniques. That should be enough. The old man wore robes of alternating blue and white. He stood there empty-handed as he looked at Xiao Chen, his eyes gleaming with spirit. He said, "My true body is already destroyed. This will clone has been used for several thousand years already. I can only appear for an hour now. Make good use of it." Xiao Chen nodded his head seriously. He slowly drew the lunar shadow saber, and slowly accumulated his aura. A vast sea slowly appeared behind him. It was the dragon subduing Slash's blue dragon emerging from the sea. Xiao Chen had never used this crystal that sealed Emperor Wu's will avatar. He planned to use it to comprehend the 3rd move of the dragon subduing Slash. The lightning tribulation saber technique was a commonly used martial technique. The dragon subduing Slash was the true trump card. Rumble. 999 pillars of water soared into the sky. A blue dragon leaped out of the sea, and a 300-meter-long dragon-shaped saber-chi instantly formed. Xiaochen roared ferociously. It sounded like a true dragon roaring as he hacked at the old man in front. The old man was slightly stunned. When he saw the saber technique Xiaochen executed, he said, "I have not seen the dragon subduing slash for several tens of thousands of years. You learned it pretty well. Unfortunately, you are still far from great perfection." The old man kicked off the ground and gathered all his quintessence in his palm. He spun around and quickly dodged the strong wind formed by the dragon-shaped saber-chi. Xiaochen used the choking hand to choke the neck of the dragon-shaped saber-chi. The mighty and unparalleled dragon-shaped saber-chi with a flourishing aura seemed to have struck its weakness, instantly scattering. Xiaochen was startled. He had not expected the blue dragon emerging from the sea to have such an opening. Xiaochen stomped on the air, and an inextinguishable dragon roar came from his body. His figure advanced rapidly. When his aura reached its peak, Xiaochen soared into the air. Auspicious clouds covered his body, materializing a soaring dragon. The old man's figure flickered. He smiled and said, "This move is pretty good. You have already grasped 80% of its essence." The old man's clothes fluttered, and his expression sank. He formed hand seals and pointed ferociously at Xiaochen, who was soaring like a true dragon. A huge finger seemed to come from beyond the heavens, carrying a strong heavenly might. It gently tapped Xiaochen's aura, pressing down on him the moment his aura rose. Bang! Blood leaked out of a corner of Xiaochen's mouth. The soaring dragon's momentum was instantly broken, and he tumbled a few times before standing up. As Xiaochen looked at the old man in the air, he entered deep thought. The strength that the other party used was no stronger than peak inferior grade martial sage. However, he could easily find the openings in Xiaochen's moves and break them. However, this was a good thing. Xiaochen was not afraid of openings. He was afraid of openings that he did not know and could still be pleased with himself. Again, the sounds of intense fighting rang out in the combat room once more. Although the old man was only an inferior grade martial sage, he relied on his vast combat experience and insight to torture Xiaochen to the point where he hovered between life and death. After more than 100 moves, Xiaochen finally patched up some of the weaknesses of Return of the Azure Dragon and Dragon Soars in the Sky. He had gained a lot. The light on the old man's body dimmed. Soon he would return to the crystal. Xiaochen took a deep breath, and the blue dragon martial spirit in his dantian split into two. The quintessence it carried flowed along two different meridians. Slowly, two azure-colored dragon images appeared on the slender lunar shadow saber in Xiaochen's hand. They coiled around the saber. A speck of light as resplendent as the sun appeared at the tip of the saber. Dragon subduing slash's third move, twin dragons playing with pearls. The saber tip flashed with light, and in an instant, it reflected the old man's figure. Then, it quickly flew towards him. The two dragon images formed and chased after that speck of light. When the old man saw this move, his expression turned somewhat grave. He glanced at that formless light, and his figure flickered around the combat room. However, no matter how the old man dodged, that speck of light locked onto the old man and chased him relentlessly. The two dragon images quickly formed behind it. The dragon scales on the old man's body were clearly visible. The dragon horns on the old man's head, and the dragon chi he spat out made it hard to distinguish the real from the fake. A faint dragon might slowly spread out. Finally, the old man sighed helplessly and stopped. He said, "Never mind. I should have known that I would not be able to dodge such a shameless move." That speck of light instantly entered the old man's body, and the two blue dragons flew out. A strong wind blew, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. The old man threw a palm strike and circulated his quintessence, using the remaining energy to clash head-on with this move. An intense explosion rang out, accompanied by the horrifying fluctuations of surging quintessence. A wave of cyan light swept out. Kassier, Kassier. Several combat puppets stopped at the edge of the combat room instantly collapsed. When everything vanished, the old man's figure could no longer be seen. He must have returned to the crystal. Xiaochen panted, his complexion pale. This move used his origin energy and exhausted a lot of it. However, it looked like the effects were pretty good. Even Emperor Wu could not find any openings. Unable to dodge, he could only receive it head-on. 2 dragons playing with pearls was just the beginning. If Xiaochen cultivated it further, he could execute 3 dragons playing with pearls, 4 dragons playing with pearls, and even the highest level of 9 dragons playing with pearls. When Xiaochen saw some of the precious combat puppets in the combat room shattered into pieces, he felt somewhat vexed. He did not know if the Haotian sect would call him over for compensation. Closing his eyes and sitting cross-legged, Xiaochen entered a state of selflessness. Then, he started to carefully comprehend his gains in the past hour, memorizing the openings of the first 2 moves of the dragon's subduing slash. When the sky turned dark, Shui Lingling's cry came from outside the Heaven Series training room. Xiaochen opened his eyes and executed Thunder Dragon steps, leaping out the door in a few breaths. Shui Lingling glanced at Xiaochen and discovered that the expression in his eyes had become even more reserved. She could no longer see through him. When Xiaochen looked carefully, the purple heavenly sage laws behind him were actually hazy as well. She could only see countless electric sparks crackling and flickering endlessly. As Xiaochen walked, he gained a sharpness that had not been there before. He gave off a faint king-grade true dragon chi, which surprised Shui Lingling the most. In the past, Xiaochen had been this reserved as well, simple and unadorned. However, he had kept his sharpness hidden in his heart, not revealing it at all. Now for some reason, he actually revealed a trace of his sharpness. Given his cultivation, it was not that he could not control this sharpness. Instead, he did it casually, not suppressing it on purpose. Did this mean that the unparalleled saber with unparalleled sharpness had already decided to leave its scabbard and fight for its place in this age of geniuses? With just one meeting, Shui Lingling thought of many things from Xiaochen. Furthermore, her guesses were very accurate. Xiaochen glanced at Shui Lingling, feeling somewhat astonished. Her improvement in the past month was no weaker than his. Xiaochen did not know where exactly she cultivated, but the effects were no weaker than in the Heaven Series training room. First senior sister, why are you looking for me? Xiaochen asked. Shui Lingling took out a crystal and handed it to Xiaochen seriously. This is a will clone that my master specially condensed for you. It has 1/10 of his strength. To condense this will clone, he needs to recuperate for 5 years. However, as long as a martial emperor does not appear, this will clone can protect your life at any time. Xiaochen received the crystal and felt the energy in it. It was much stronger than the aura of the old man in the cultivation room. Hence, what Shui Lingling said was true. Such a life-saving item was something that Xiaochen urgently needed. He could not help but have a favorable impression of this Haotian emperor, whom he had never met before. Haha, let's go. Let's gather at the first elder's place. We are going to the central province's Bushin Palace. Chapter 800. Shui Lingling smiled gently and called out the profound sun bird. Then, she picked up Xiaochen and flew to a rather majestic transportation formation on the Haotian star. Spiritual energy filled the undulating mountain ranges. Lush vegetation filled the air, and spirit beasts roamed the place. The dense aura of life made it impossible to associate this place with the cold starry heavens. The surroundings of the Haotian sect of this star had been completely remodeled. It was not much different from the Kunlun realm. Xiaochen and Shui Lingling arrived above a transportation formation, surrounded by 4 mountain peaks. The first elder, Han Qinghe, several inner sect elders, and the many true inheritors preparing to participate in the Sage War arrived. Yu Chenxi, Junxi, and the others had all arrived long ago. When Xiaochen saw these familiar faces, he asked, "First senior sister, could it be that we used this transportation formation to get directly to the central province's Bushin Palace?" Shui Lingling smiled gently and said, "What's wrong? Do you think that it is impossible? With enough astral cores, we can even send you to the Sky Dome realm. This is something the Haotian sect spent the blood and sweat of the 4th generation of Emperor Wu to build. Directly send me back to the Sky Dome realm?" When Xiaochen heard this, his eyes lit up. He still had many ties to the Sky Dome realm. They were all there: Lu Riyue, Lu Suifeng, old friends of the Xiao clan; Xiao Yulan, Feng Feixue, Yingyu, All these fresh names were etched in the depths of Xiao Chen's mind. He had never forgotten them. In the past, Xiao Chen had thought that he would not return until he reached Emperor Wu. However, now that he thought about it, this was a heartless promise. Martial Emperor was the peak of the martial Dao. Xiao Chen did not know how long it would take before he could reach it. Shui Lingling's ordinary words unintentionally touched the softest part of Xiao Chen's heart. Junior brother Xiao Chen, are you all right? We are going down. Xiao Chen came back to his senses, smiled, and gently landed on the ground. When the first elder, Han Qinghe, saw the two of them coming over, he gently waved his hand and called them to the side. His expression was somewhat grave as he said, "Let me tell you two some bad news. The sovereign noble clans of the Profound Domain will be coming to participate in the Sage Saint ranking of our Bushin Palace." Xiao Chen's expression did not change, but ripples appeared in his heart. The strength of the sovereign noble clans was comparable to the Holy Lands. Normally, they would not submit to the Bushin Palace. The ranking of the Proud Son of Heaven ranking did not include these people. Yen Shursan's horrifying strength. If all the scions of the sovereign noble clans were as strong as him, the Proud Son of Heaven ranking would not be able to rank them. If he wanted to get into the top 10 in this Sage War and obtain a spot for himself, he would probably have to face some difficulties. Shui Lingling said mockingly, "They must be here for the heavenly dew divine spring." Normally, these sovereign noble clans do not care about the life or death of the human race. Now they know that they are part of the human race. The heavenly dew divine spring cleansed the marrow and cleansed the blood. It was infused with the heavenly Tao's origin energy. It contained great luck, allowing a cultivator to advance to martial emperor before the age of 100. In Kunlun Mountain, it took 10,000 years for the heavenly dew divine spring to fill up. This was a rare opportunity. It would be hard for those sovereign noble clans not to think about it. Han Qinghe sighed. Under the combined pressure of the four sovereign noble clans, the Bushin Palace had no choice but to take a step back. If they really started a civil war, the human race would not be able to bear it. An inner sect elder at the side said helplessly, "We can only blame the three holy masters for not living up to expectations in the past few years. If the Dragon's Gate's Qing Emperor were still around, these sovereign noble clans would not dare to say anything." Han Qinghe said, "Now that things have come to this, there is no point in complaining. The two of you just have to do your best. There were many outstanding talents in history who did not soak in this heavenly dew divine spring." Han Qinghe spoke very generously, but everyone could hear the regret in the first elder's voice. Xiao Chen performed a cupped fist salute and said, "First elder, rest assured. Xiao Chen has received many favors from the Haotian sect. On this trip, I will definitely fight for a spot for the Haotian sect." As Xiao Chen spoke, he revealed his sharpness, showing great self-confidence. Shui Lingling said with a resolute expression, "First elder, rest assured. Shui Lingling will also do her best to fight for a spot for the Haotian sect." Han Qinghe smiled faintly. Under the influence of the two, he said with a heroic spirit, "Since the two of you are so confident, why would I say such discouraging words? I would be undervaluing myself too much. So what if the sovereign noble clans come? Let's go. Let's fight them for now." After the first elder spoke, he gave some instructions. The nearby inner sect elders started to slowly fill the complicated and vast interstellar transportation formation with high-ranked astral cores. So. Pillars of light shot up from the formation lines. Space started to fluctuate intensely, and a huge black hole appeared above everyone's heads. The interior of the black hole was intertwined with complex time and space coordinates. A boundless suction force surged out, directly pulling everyone in. Xiao Chen felt his body stretch infinitely. Finally, he turned into tiny particles. His body disappeared, leaving only his thoughts in this space-time tunnel. Xiao Chen flew off into the distance at a speed that cultivators could not comprehend. By the time Xiao Chen felt his body reassemble, the group had already arrived at another transportation formation. When they looked around, they saw a sea of people. The scenery also felt familiar. "We've arrived. Let's go directly to the Proud Son of Heaven ranking." Han Qinghe waved his hand, and a king-grade warship appeared. Then he raised the Haotian sect's banner and led the group to the Bushan Palace's proud son of heaven ranking. The surroundings were densely packed with all sorts of warships and spirit beasts. The air buzzed with noise. All the superior grade sects of the entire Tianwu domain had arrived. The Sage War was a major event of the human race every 4 years. At that time, the proud son of heaven ranking would be completely disrupted and reshuffled. Coincidentally, this Sage War happened to coincide with the reopening of the Heavenly Dew Divine Lake. Such a grand scene was not strange at all. However, Xiaochen was not used to going from absolute silence to such a noisy environment. The warship traveled through the somewhat crowded sky. After 1 hour, they finally arrived at the proud son of heaven ranking. The original sage wall had been moved somewhere else. Now only 1,000 sage lamps remained, arranged in the shape of a pyramid. An empty space appeared within 5 kilometers of the proud son of heaven ranking. It was like a formless barrier covered the entire area from the sky to the ground. The warships that gathered from all directions collapsed from top to bottom. With the proud son of heaven ranking as the core, they formed a huge ring. Xiaochen stood on the deck and looked down. At the bottom of the proud son of heaven ranking, he saw his lamp. He could not help but feel slightly stunned. Then he revealed a smile. It had been close to 2 years. Unexpectedly, no one had been able to break his lamp yet. The Haotian sect's people are here. There were at least 3,000 or 4,000 warships stationed around the proud son of heaven ranking, from the ground to the sky. The flag on each warship represented a sect. With one glance, although there were many sects, the true 9 ranks of the great families were few in number. This was especially so for the ones like the Haotian sect, which could be considered part of the 9 ranks of the great families, which were even rarer. When the proud son of heaven ranking appeared, it immediately attracted the attention of several people, many of whom were old acquaintances of Xiaochen. The Full Moon Pavilion's Feng Xingxing, the Battle Realm's Niu Deng, the Shiman noble clan's Shiman Bao, the 1,000 mystery sects Hua Dao, the 7 giants Wang Meng, and the passionate young master, Murong Lingfeng, had all arrived long ago. I heard that the demonic genius who occupied the last rank of the proud son of heaven ranking for close to 2 years is on the Haotian sect's warship. That fellow is really a demonic genius. After coming to the Kunlun realm for 2 years, he already comprehended a will and defeated the extreme insects by Wuxia. However, he is really too insincere. He occupied the last rank for 2 years without bothering about it. Who knows how many new disciples of the various sects are cursing him in secret. There is no reward for being the last rank. This fellow does not know how to spend some time to increase his ranking. Xiaochen felt somewhat surprised. He had not expected all the discussions about the Haotian sect to focus on him. Jun Si, who was at the side, smiled and said, "Junior brother Xiaochen, it looks like your popularity now rivals that of the 7 giants. In the past, when others mentioned the Haotian sect, they talked about our first senior sister the most." When Shui Lingling heard this, she smiled casually and said, 7 giants. Now there are no more 7 giants. If one does not comprehend a will, they will be eliminated by the passing of time. They will never be able to stand at the peak. Xiaochen could not help but view her in a new light. Based on what Shui Lingling said, it seemed like she had comprehended a will long ago. However, he could not tell from her appearance. As Xiaochen chatted with the others, the noisy scene suddenly turned quiet. It was like someone incredible had arrived. Pusiai. Suddenly a bright, dazzling holy light descended from the sky. Xiaochen squinted slightly. 3 emperor-grade warships that surpassed king-grade slowly appeared in the sky. One looked like the deep-sea heavenly turtle, the black tortoise. One looked like the vermilion bird, the eastern divine bird. And one looked like the white tiger, the holy beast in the clouds. The holy light was very dazzling, enveloping everyone. The people of the 3 holy masters are coming out. The many cultivators who had been silent for a while looked up. Then they all erupted in excitement. The voices turned into waves, rising and falling. As they drifted, several warships shook. The bright light could not obscure Xiaochen's eyes. The boundless holy might could not suppress the surging hot-bloodedness in Xiaochen's heart. The Phoenix's Passion Palace, the Divine Martial Gate, and the White Emperor city of the three holy masters finally saw their true appearance. He wondered how glorious the three holy masters were now. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just at this moment, 4 warships appeared in the east. Holy might spread out, and the light they gave off did not diminish. Unexpectedly, they were also Emperor-grade warships that surpassed King-grade warships. From left to right, the flags on the warships had the words Yan, Ing, Jiang, and Lin written on them. These were the 4 sovereign noble clans of the human race. The warships of these 4 clans were no weaker than the 3 holy masters' warships. They seemed to be competing against each other. A few youths, male or female, stood at the bow of each warship. These were the absolute geniuses the sovereign noble clans sent to fight for the slots. This time, the 4 clans were very ambitious. Each clan wanted to obtain at least 2 slots, leaving only 2 for the other sects of the Tianwu domain. On the warship in the middle, a Jiang clan old man beckoned. 3 people jumped down from each of the other 3 warships, 1 old man and 2 youths. Chapter 801. The Jiang clan old man smiled gently and dismissed everyone else on the bow. Aside from the 2 core geniuses of the various clans, only the leaders of the various clans remained on the deck. These 4 old men were all Grandmaster-level martial sages. Furthermore, there was a bright light on their foreheads. They seemed to have comprehended wills. None of them were weaker than the Haotian sect's elder Bai. In fact, their accumulations seemed to be slightly higher. When looking carefully, the heavenly sage laws behind them all linked together, forming rings of light that ranged from small to large. With one glance, it was impossible to tell how many rings there were. It was clear that his cultivation had already reached the peak of martial sage. He was only a step away from becoming a quasi-emperor. The Jiang clan old man took the lead and said, "This time, everyone should have the same goal. So to avoid internal conflicts, I feel that we need to discuss this first." The leader of the Ing clan group was an old woman who still retained her charm. A man and a woman followed behind her. The man was handsome and elegant, exuding a righteous air of royalty. If Xiao Chun were here, he would immediately recognize the woman beside the man as Ing Qiong, whom he had an agreement with. However, at this moment, Ing Qiong wore gorgeous golden battle armor, outlining her perfect figure. She wore a golden phoenix coronet on her head, looking very noble and honorable. Her solemn and dignified expression made it hard to connect her to the mischievous girl who played tricks in the Stargrave Palace. The Ing clan old woman said, "Naturally, we have to discuss this. However, how should we discuss this? Does old brother Jiang have any good ideas?" The 2 old men leading the Yan clan and Lin clan remained silent. Clearly, they tacitly agreed to the discussion as they waited for the Jiang clan old man to continue. The Jiang clan old man smiled and said, "It's very simple. Everyone will rely on their own strength. We will fight fairly and not kill each other. Later, 1,000 thrones will appear in the sky. Each throne will have a number behind it. As long as you can sit on a throne, the number behind it will be your rank on the proud Son of Heaven ranking. If you rank in the top 10, you will be qualified to enter the heavenly dew divine spring." Everyone knew about this rule. Every time the sage and saint ranking was reshuffled, it would be like this. All the rankings would be messed up and the ranking would be rearranged. Everyone looked at this peak martial sage of the Jiang clan, waiting for him to continue. The higher the ranking, the greater the reward. However, with the wealth of our 4 families, some of the rewards from Bushin Palace are nothing to us. There's no need to fight for empty titles. As long as you can get a spot, you can accept being in the top 10. This time, there are quite a few disciples from the various clans who have come to participate in the rankings. However, you and I both know that the ones who can truly compete are the heirs of the various clans who have comprehended will. In this aspect, our 4 clans are not inferior to each other. We all have 2 princes who have comprehended will. In other words, we can fight for 8 spots. The old man from the Jiang clan paused for a moment before continuing. What I want to say is very simple. Regardless of which throne is in the top 10, as long as the core disciples of the 4 clans are fighting for it, the other 7 must give up unconditionally. They can only fight for another throne. The Grandmaster-level martial sages of the other three clans lowered their heads in deep thought. They felt that what the Jiang clan old man said was acceptable. In this way, the internal friction between the various clans could be avoided to the greatest extent, and the benefits of each clan would be maximized. The Ying clan matron turned her head and discussed with Ying Qiong and another heir for a while before saying, "Our Ying clan agrees to this agreement." The Lin clan old man nodded and said, "Our Lin clan agrees as well." The Yen clan Grandmaster-level martial sage turned his head and asked in a soft voice, "Shursan Shursi, what do you think?" One of the two Yen clan heirs was Yen Shursan, whom Xiao Chen had met once before. The other was Yen Shursi. These two had similar names, but their auras were completely different. Yen Shursan cultivated the killing sword Dao. He had a stern, cold, and emotionless expression. Yen Shursi's handsome appearance was radiant and generous, giving people a natural sense of closeness. "First elder, just make the decision. I have no objections," Yen Shursi said in a melodious voice as he smiled gently. Yen Shursan's lips moved and he said, "It doesn't matter." In the end, the Yen clan also agreed to this agreement. The Jiang clan old man smiled and said, "Good. Let's discuss the specifics of how to make use of the disciples of the other clans to cause trouble for our competitors." While the four sovereign clans discussed how to obtain the most spots, the leading elders of the three holy masters were not idle, either. They were anxiously making arrangements. At the same time, the clans that believed that they had the strength to fight for the top 10 were also anxiously making arrangements. However, most of the sect disciples did not even think about getting into the top 10. To them, the sage ranking was just a grand event of the human race that happened once every 4 years. What they needed to do was to take advantage of this reshuffle and the chaotic battles to fight for their own rankings on the proud Son of Heaven ranking. As for the heavenly dew divine spring, it was destined to be an unattainable fantasy. It was not something they could touch. The arrival of the sovereign clans pushed the atmosphere to a climax. All sorts of discussions rang out endlessly. The fight for the top 10 was about to begin. This would be a chaotic battle for all the geniuses of the human race. Whoever could stand out would be the center of attention. The glory of the past could only become history. Only by getting into the top 10 could one truly obtain a spot in this age of geniuses. Kassier. Starting from the one belonging to Xiao Chen. The 1,000 oil lamps on the proud Son of Heaven ranking started shattering one after another. The surroundings immediately fell silent. Everyone knew that the true chaotic battle was about to begin. The battlefield was about to begin. Until the end of time, my body is light. I am free and unfettered. Glory will not die for 10,000 years. Hot-bloodedness will never die out. One will not grow old even after traveling 1,000 mountains. One will not come even after looking through the autumn waters in winter. I hold the sun and the moon and pluck the stars. What can I do even if the entire world is my enemy? When the oil lamp that belonged to the White Emperor city Xiahojua at the top of the pyramid shattered, a sage's voice rang out like the song of the great Tao, resounding in the world. The imprints of the predecessors of the human race, all turned into images of light, and soared into the sky. The voices of the various sages reverberated endlessly in the world. The disciples of the various sects on the surrounding warships all showed excited expressions. Under the influence of the sages' voices, they felt like they had returned to the ancient era, the most glorious period of the human race. Back then, at the peak of the martial Tao, hundreds of races fought in a chaotic battle. The predecessors of the human race shone with light, using great strength and wisdom. For the disciples of the later generations, they established a great empire, passing it down to this day and never falling. That was an age of epic proportions. Heroes came in large numbers, outstanding talents rose endlessly, emperors were as common as the clouds, and sages filled the land. Now the age of geniuses arrived again. The peak of the martial epic would appear once more. Who could be unrivaled under the heavens and rule over the billions of humans? Since ancient times, the sages have always been lonely. The 10,000 years of mundane affairs are all for naught. A desolate sage voice suddenly rang out. The fire-like great Tao voice in the world suddenly stopped, and the image of a white-haired old man appeared in the sky. That was the spiritual mark left by the human sovereign of the ancient era. Even now, it had not extinguished. The human sovereign pointed to the sky, and the other human sages did the same. Boom! Space trembled, and a small world suddenly opened in the void. A black curtain of night covered the land. A vast star chart slowly unfurled in the sky. Many thrones with numbers on their backs floated in the dreamlike river of stars, giving off a light. After summoning the miraculous scene of the boundless river of stars, the marks left by the ancient sages flickered and vanished. However, after a while, the sect disciples on the 10,000 warships shot out like arrows. They gave off lights of various colors, showing fervent gazes as they flew towards the thrones in the starry heavens. In that instant, close to 100,000 cultivators charged out at the same time. The vast scene was indescribable. Naturally, the starry heavens were not the true starry heavens. That was just a small world that the human sages carved out. However, the thousands of cultivators was not just an empty number. Figures continuously jumped out of the warships of the various sects in a ring, continuously increasing this number. Tens of thousands of cultivators flew towards a small world at the same time. The scene was so majestic that several of the older generation cultivators sighed. There were 1,000 thrones in the starry sky. Behind each throne was a number formed by light. It represented the rank of the person who owned the throne on the prodigy roll. At the highest point of the starry heavens, 10 thrones stood out. They each stood in a corner, and gave off a dazzling light. One of the golden thrones was even more unique. Not only did it stand at the highest point of the starry heavens, but its golden light was also dazzling. 2 soaring golden dragons were carved on the armrests, giving off the tyrannical aura of a king. That was the supreme throne of the proud son of heaven ranking, which represented the first rank, empty. Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, loud bangs resounded in the air. Several of the cultivators at the very front seemed to crash into something just as they were about to reach the starry heavens. A huge rebound knocked them back, causing their faces to swell. Their quintessence scattered, and they fell to the ground as they cried out miserably. However, there were also many strong sect cultivators who directly dove in without any obstruction. Then they excitedly headed for the thrones at the front. That should be a test. Without a certain level of strength, one would not be qualified to compete for a rank on the proud son of heaven ranking. Even if the proud son of heaven ranking was reshuffled, no one would be allowed to take advantage of the situation. The other true inheritors on the deck of the Haotian sect's warship had already gone ahead. Only Xiao Chun and Shui Lingling had not set off yet. Shui Lingling glanced at the incredibly chaotic starry heavens. Then she said softly, "Junior brother Xiao Chun, I will go first now. Let's meet at the highest point of the starry heavens." The profound sun bird on Shui Lingling's shoulder cried out sharply, and turned into a clump of fiery light. Then, it quickly flew towards the starry heavens with Shui Lingling on its back. Xiao Chun looked at the cultivators filling the sky. They all had excited expressions as they struggled to reach their destination. Lofty aspirations surged in his heart. Being born in this great age was the happiness of all cultivators. Chapter 802. Elder Han Xiaochun is going as well. Han Qinghe stopped Xiaochun and said, "Don't be in a rush to leave. There are some things that cannot be said in front of others. Now you can finally say them. The sect master told me to pass a message to you." Xiaochun stopped walking, feeling somewhat suspicious. The Haotian emperor, whom I have never met before, has something to say to me. Han Qinghe said sullenly. The 3 holy masters should know about your martial spirit. However, due to certain reasons, even if they are not willing to see the descendants of the Qing emperor rise up, they will not do anything too excessive to you. However, it is hard to say for those sovereign noble clans. Back then, when the Qing emperor was in charge of the Bushan Palace, he was too domineering. Some of the sovereign noble clans were not convinced, so he destroyed 3 or 4 of them. Aside from the Ying clan, all the sovereign noble clans detest the Qing emperor. If they know that you possess the blue dragon martial spirit, they will definitely make a move on you after this battle. Xiaochun felt slightly stunned. He had not expected there to be such a secret. Back then, the Azure Emperor could even destroy a sovereign noble clan. Exactly how strong was the strongest sovereign martial emperor of the Kunlun realm during the ancient era? Han Qinghe continued. Although the dragon subduing slash has not appeared for tens of thousands of years, and many people have forgotten about it, those old fellows of the sovereign noble clans will definitely not forget about it. Hence, the sect master instructed you not to use the dragon subduing slash in this sage war. Xiaochen smiled. However, there was no shock or fear in his eyes. Instead, there was a sharpness and rage. He said, Xiaochen appreciates the Haotian Emperor's kind intentions. However, there are some things that will come. When Han Qinghe saw the situation, he said anxiously, Xiaochen, don't be rash. You still have a long way to go. Xiaochen stretched out his hand, and the lunar shadow saber appeared in his palm. His lips curled up into a smile as he said, Future? Why should I deceive myself and others? I can't avoid it unless I cripple my martial spirit once more. I will never be able to avoid it. Running away is never the way to solve problems. I've been suppressing this anger in my heart for 5 years. 5 years ago, my father chased me out of the house. Now that I think about it, it was laughable. The reason was because I had awakened the blue dragon martial soul. Just because of a martial spirit, a father chased his beloved son out. Who can understand his pain? I can't tell anyone about the anger in my heart, and who can understand it? Who exactly did the Dragon's Gate's Qing Emperor offend? 50,000 years later, my Xiao clan is still carrying such a heavy mountain, treading on thin ice. Since everyone in the world is afraid of the birth of the blue dragon, then today, I will declare in front of everyone in the world that there are not just 3 holy lands in the world. My blue dragon martial spirit is not something that cannot be seen. Right and wrong, gratitude and grudges were settled. Let all the gratitude and grudges of the past come to an end today. I've had enough. I've had enough. Since people will find out sooner or later, there is no need to care so much. Even if I die sooner or later, I will still die. Since that is the case, I should at least control my life and death in my own hands. I have accumulated resentment for 5 years, but I can't return to my home. I can't vent my anger. I've already waited for 5 years and advanced to peak unrivaled half-sage. If I still can't vent this anger, will I have to wait until I become a sovereign martial emperor before I can do what I want? How long will I have to wait? Will I have to endure this anger for another 100 years? That is definitely not me, Xiaochen. Definitely not. Let me be willful for once. Let me settle my grudges and be myself. I am the descendant of the Dragon's Gate's Qing Emperor. I am Xiaochen. My apologies, Haotian Emperor. Electric light surged under Xiaochen's feet. With one step, he traversed 5 kilometers, instantly surpassing a large group of people. In an instant, he tore through the sky like a bolt of lightning, leaving many cultivators behind him. Boom! A figure landed on the deck, and a strong emperor's might spread out. This startled Han Qinghe. When he turned his head back to look, he saw that it was the Haotian Emperor personally arriving. Sect Master, why are you here yourself? The Haotian Emperor smiled faintly and said, Since I have nothing to do, I came to take a look. This fellow really exceeded my expectations. He probably exceeded those 3's expectations as well. As Han Qinghe watched Xiaochen move further away, he asked, Is that a good thing or a bad thing for him? The Haotian Emperor revealed a contemplative gaze. Then he said, Sometimes, it is impossible to proceed according to common sense. Perhaps one can really do something unexpected. Han Qinghe felt suspicious. He asked, Sect Master, what are you trying to say? The Haotian Emperor smiled faintly and said, This Xiaochen is not as simple as you think. The Dragon's Gate's Qing Emperor set up 50,000 years ago. How could he not have a backup plan? If he did not have a backup plan, the enemies he once offended would have killed all of his descendants long ago. Xiaochen is trying to cut off all means of retreat, forcing out the backup plan that the Qing Emperor set up. He does not want it to remain unclear. With his sharpness, he is destined not to be someone who can be easily manipulated. If he can really prove himself, I don't mind making a bet in advance. The Haotian Emperor revealed a determined expression as he muttered to himself. Without any obstructions, Xiaochen cleared the first floor's test and arrived at the small world. Starlight dotted the surroundings, and it was dark. It was like he was really in the starry heavens. All sorts of chaotic fighting sounds rang out. There were at least 100 cultivators fighting around each sovereign. Saber lights and sword images filled the air, and blood flew everywhere. Occasionally, someone died under someone else's saber. However, this place was rather strange. After someone died, they did not truly die. Instead, they appeared outside the starry heavens. These people were unharmed, but they could no longer enter the small world of the starry heavens, losing the right to continue fighting for the proud son of heaven ranking. Amidst the chaos, it was hard to avoid accidental injuries. As Xiaochen walked, he ran into several cultivators flying at him. If he could dodge, he would. If he could not, Xiaochen directly punched. With a surge of force, he sent a cultivator attacking him flying out of the starry heavens with one punch. After sending out 100 people, Xiaochen's horrifying strength finally turned the area within 1 kilometer of him into a pure land. No one dared to barge in. Xiaochen shifted his gaze upwards, looking at the 10 sovereigns at the very top of the starry heavens. The surrounding bustling scene and the sovereigns within easy reach were not his target. The cultivators of the 9 ranks of the great clans and the sovereign noble clans fought for the 10th to 2nd thrones. The battles there were more than 10 times more intense than the ones below. However, the group of people surrounding the golden throne at the very top of the starry heavens remained silent, as they cautiously looked at each other. The Phoenix's Passion Palaces Nuanmuyun, the Divine Martial Gates Fengwuji, the White Emperor Cities Xiaohoju, the Thunder and Lightning Palaces in Jiuanxi, the Yan Clan's Yanshursi, and the mysterious swordsman Duan Yi, who had recently risen up. The 5 of them all feared each other, sizing each other up. However, no one dared to act rashly lest they become a common target for the others. The first golden throne of the proud son of heaven ranking held a fatal attraction for some people. No matter how intense the competition was, they would do their best to fight for it. A brilliant light flashed in Xiaochen's eyes. Electric light flashed under his feet as he executed Thunder Dragon steps at full power. Instantly, he crossed the starry heavens and arrived at the highest point. Then he descended from the sky and slowly headed for the golden throne. Compared to the other 9, the number of people fighting for this throne was pitifully few. However, the intensity of the competition and the quality of the contenders was the highest. Without exception, these 6 experts were all demonic geniuses who comprehended wills. 3 of them were even legendary existences in the Tianwu domain. Their radiance and holy might deterred others from getting close. The first rank of the proud son of heaven ranking was not just an empty title. The luck of the ancient sages would land on it. The bountiful rewards of the Bushan Palace also tempted everyone. White Emperor Cities Xiaohoju held a sword in his hand. His gaze was like lightning, seemingly piercing through the sky. As he stared at the golden throne, he displayed absolute confidence. Before the reshuffle, Xiaohoju already held the first rank. Now that the reshuffle was over, he did not intend to give up the first rank. However, the intensity of the competition this time far surpassed Xiaoho's expectations. Not only did his 2 old rivals from the Holy Lands target the first rank as well. The sovereign noble clans Yanshursi, the lower realms Lux's mysterious swordsman Duan Yi, and in Jiuanxi, who just fought Fengwuji to a draw. None of them were minor characters. No one dares to sit? In that case, I Yanshursi want this throne. Yanshursi smiled faintly and moved his feet, preparing to land on the throne. Boom! Just as Yanshursi moved his feet, the other 5 instantly drew their weapons. A strong aura, accompanied by the light of their wills, swept out. The true dragon lightning whip in Jiuanxi's hand, the scarlet blood spear in Fengwuji's hand, and the heavenly phoenix sword in Nuanmuyun's hand were all subdivine weapons. The instant they were drawn, a melodious hum resounded in the air, lingering for a long time. Xiaohoju remained as unmoving as a mountain. However, the azure ring on his index finger started to flicker with light, indicating that he was ready to make a move at any moment. Only the mysterious swordsman Duan Yi revealed a faint smile in the depths of his eyes, appearing the most calm. Under the pressure of the 5 experts' auras, Undercurrents surged in the condensed air. Winds blew continuously. At this moment, all they needed was a spark to kick off a huge battle. Below the starry heavens, the experts vying for the other 9 thrones felt the horrifying auras merging together. Their expressions changed involuntarily. Due to the agreement, the other geniuses of the 4 sovereign clans could not compete for the Golden Throne. The other geniuses wanted to, but they could not, fearing that they would lose sight of others. Due to various reasons, these geniuses could not compete for the first rank. However, that did not mean that they did not yearn for it. Yen Shirsi gently withdrew his foot. His face, which was radiant with sunlight, cracked a smile as he said, "I was just joking. Don't be so serious. Brother Xiaoho, I see that your eyes are the biggest. How about you take the first rank?" Xiaoho Ju smiled coldly in his heart, but his expression did not change. He said, "Yen Shirsi, why the need to put on an act? Since you want to compete, I do not mind letting you go first." No one was a fool. The first person to fly to the throne would definitely be attacked by the others at the same time, becoming cannon fodder immediately. Furthermore, one had to sit on the throne for 10 seconds before they could truly obtain it. How could it be that simple? Everyone here was an outstanding genius. However, they were not arrogant enough to think that they could defeat everyone else by themselves. They had to take advantage of the chaos. Chapter 803. And Yuanxi toyed with the 9-segment True Dragon lightning whip in his hand as it flickered with crackling electricity. The light of the Will of Thunder scattered indistinctly as it resisted the holy might of the 3 holy masters. When Yuanxi saw that golden throne, a fervent look flashed in his eyes. He wanted to move, but he resisted in the end. The atmosphere at the scene once again fell into a strange silence. No one dared to take a step recklessly. Just at this moment, a resplendent purple electric light suddenly lit up at the highest point of the starry heavens. That light was very dazzling and piercing. The electric light flashed for an instant before vanishing in an instant. If not for the stinging sensation in their eyes, they might even doubt the existence of this electric light. The 6 squinted and looked up. Their expressions changed at the same time. At some point in time, a white figure had appeared on the back of the golden throne. This person had delicate facial features and a cold expression. His white robes were pure and untainted by dust. He held a long saber in his right hand as he swept his gaze over the 6 with a calm gaze. White-robed bladesman Xiaochun. In that instant, the atmosphere of the place filled with undercurrents surged. The gazes of Nuan Muyun, Feng Wuji, and Yuanxi, and Yen Shirsi all turned sharp. A strong wind blew, and thunderclouds spread out. The cries of the vermilion bird resounded in the starry heavens. The low roar of the black tortoise surged like a tsunami. The roar of the white tiger caused the winds and clouds to change. Xiaochun's appearance ignited the undercurrents that had been brewing for a long time. Thunder Dragon's rage. And Yuanxi's True Dragon lightning whip turned into a berserk lightning dragon. The light of the Will of Thunder gathered as it lashed at Xiaochun. It was like Yuanxi was holding a dragon in his hand. One finger breaking the heavens. A murderous intent surged in Xiaoho Ju's eyes as he ferociously pointed at Xiaochun. The ring on his index finger flickered with a dazzling light, and a huge jade-green finger tore through the air, creating ripples. It seemed like it really pierced through the heavens as it ruthlessly pressed down on Xiaochun. Feng Wuji grasped the scarlet blood spear with one hand and gently spun it. The spear, as red as blood, spun rapidly, and the sound of a horrifying sea rose. A vast sea appeared behind Feng Wuji. The surging sea soared as the scarlet blood spear spun, forming a horrifying sea tornado. Suddenly, Feng Wuji pulled back his hand, and the scarlet blood spear stopped spinning. The sound of the waves stopped. However, the tip of the spear pointed at Xiaochun, who was standing on the back of the throne. An immeasurably tall sea tornado descended from the sky, sweeping towards Xiaochun. Nuan Muyun's expression turned grave, and a beam of fiery light shot up from the heavenly phoenix sword. With a casual wave, it turned into a vermilion bird in the blink of an eye and charged at Xiaochun. Nuan Muyun's expression turned grave, and a fiery light soared into the sky from the heavenly phoenix sword. With a casual wave, it turned into a vermilion bird and charged at Xiao Chen. The smile on Yan Shixi's face was still as bright as ever. However, a murderous intent surged in the depths of his eyes. The mysterious swordsman Duan Yi, who had been in the limelight recently, saw Xiao Chen again. However, he had not expected to see him here. Duan Yi's lips curled up into a smile as he casually sent out a pitch-black sword light. The mysterious swordsman Duan Yi, who had been in the limelight recently, saw Xiao Chen again. However, he had not expected to see him here. Duan Yi smiled and casually sent out a pitch-black sword light. The horrifying scene at the highest point of the starry heavens immediately attracted the attention of many people. The elders and disciples of the various sects on the 10,000 warships did not even blink. Unexpectedly, it was the white-robed bladesman, Xiao Chen, whom no one expected. Xiao Chen had always given the impression of being low-key, never taking the initiative to cause trouble. Why did he suddenly take the initiative to fight for the first rank? This fellow is really crazy. He is facing 6 absolute geniuses with wills at the same time. With such concentrated attacks, even the sons of the 3 holy masters would not be able to block them. After defeating Bai Wuxia, his confidence probably swelled a little too much. The Tianwu domain is not as simple as he thinks it is. The radiance of wills and the holy might of the holy beast martial spirit are already enough to suppress him to the point where he cannot move. How can he possibly retaliate? The shocking scene of the 6 experts attacking at the same time startled some of the older generation experts. When they saw Xiao Chen's actions, they felt like he was committing suicide. Seated on the throne, Xiao Chen's expression was calm as he watched the heaven-ranked martial techniques flying over from all directions, as well as the invisible will and holy might surging over. Xiao Chen grasped his saber hilt with his right hand and drew the lunar shadow saber. The purple talisman in his sea of consciousness flew out of his forehead and turned into a beam of light soaring into the sky before quickly scattering. Thousands of bolts of pure purple lightning formed from the immortal will of thunder descended from the sky. As they moved, they looked like thousands of lightning flood dragons roaring ferociously from a distance. Boundless lightning tribulation! Xiao Chen shouted and turned into the emotionless heavenly Tao. He waved his hand, and the thousands of lightning flood dragons charged down. Thunder roared and lightning flashed in the sky. Dark clouds covered the sky. The thousands of lightning flood dragons looked like a vast army charging at the heaven-ranked martial techniques that the 6 people sent out. Earth-shattering explosions rang out continuously in the starry sky, causing the entire small starry sky realm to shake violently. The cultivators fighting for the other thrones all froze. They felt a strange horror in their hearts as they stared at the highest point of the starry heavens in shock. All sorts of shock waves stirred up that place, turning it into chaos. There were the sounds of surging waves, the cries of divine birds blazing with fiery light, and the boundless lightning flood dragons tearing through the sky. There was a loud rumble, and an energy ripple swept out from that world. The other hundreds of thrones in the starry sky were all swept away. Several of the cultivators who just sat on the thrones were the most unlucky. They vomited a mouthful of blood and bounced off their thrones. This could be said to be an undeserved calamity. Xiao Hoju's jade-like fingers shattered, and Juanqi's berserk lightning dragon turned back into the true dragon whip. Nguan Muyun's flaming divine bird turned into a fiery light and vanished. Yan Shixi's 9 sun sword qi vanished like smoke. The pitch-black sword qi that Duan Yi casually sent out immediately turned into ashes. Xiao Chen's 1,000 lightning flood dragons turned into strands of wandering electric light, crackling softly in the air. The expressions of the other 6 people were somewhat startled. Unexpectedly, Xiao Chen broke the martial techniques that the 6 of them executed together with one move. Although the 6 of them had held back, those were still the fatal strikes of 6 people. If it were any of them, they would not have been able to achieve such a result. Whoosh! The strands of electricity in the air quickly gathered together, and an immortal aura spread out. A purple wool talisman reformed above Xiao Chen's head. It imitated the divine lightning and wrote immortality. This was the light of Xiao Chen's undefeatable will. And Juanqi revealed an expression of understanding. He exclaimed with some shock, He perfectly merged his will with his martial technique. A perfect fusion. He actually managed to do it. Ignoring the shock on these people's faces, Xiaochen stood on the back of the throne and gently leaped off. Then he leaned back and sat firmly on the golden throne. In that instant, boundless light soared up from the back of the throne, illuminating the starry heavens. A vast and unparalleled tyrannical aura of kingship surged out like a vast ocean. The 6 powerful demonic geniuses could not help taking a step back. What kind of saber was a saber? An inextinguishable hot-bloodedness, an undefeatable saber? What kind of sword was a sword? A sword that dreamt endlessly and never broke? Since ancient times, beauties had always loved heroes. Outstanding talents competed with each other for the top. When the winds and clouds changed, chaos arose. The dream of 10,000 years would be fulfilled today. Who was not an outstanding talent? Who was not an outstanding talent? Regardless of the next life, it only mattered now. They would stand at the peak and fight for the first rank. The instant the thousands of beams of light illuminated the starry heavens, the entire sky turned into a golden ocean. The light was resplendent, dazzling everyone. The 900-odd contenders for the thrones below all froze. They could not help casting their gazes over. The various sect elders and disciples on the surrounding warships all showed expressions of incredulity. Xiaochen actually sat on the throne. He did not even bother to hide it before the 6 powerful demonic geniuses, casually sitting on it. He is really too bold. He sat on it for 10 seconds. How can he do that? At this moment, everyone focused their attention on the white-clad man sitting on the golden throne at the highest point of the starry heavens. You are seeking death. Xiao Hoju was the first to lose it. He had stood at the top of the proud son of heaven ranking for many years. How could he tolerate a latecomer trampling on his head? Heaven pointing drawing earth. He pointed out with a finger, and the ring on his index finger emitted a circle of blue light, fixing the golden throne in the air. It was as if he had really drawn a world. Then, an ancient stone finger descended from the sky. The index finger was plain, but mysterious talisman scripts were carved on it. Unexpectedly, a strand of emperors might spread out. Good. On the White Emperor City's Emperor-grade warship, the Grandmaster-level elder leading the White Emperor City group could not help but clap his hands and cheer. He smiled and said, "This finger contains the essence of the White Emperor's heavenly might finger. It even emits Emperor's might. Even if that Xiaochen stood, he might not be able to block it." The other old men on the warship's bow also appeared rather relaxed. Remaining on the throne for 10 seconds was not that simple. Most people would wait for the others to exhaust themselves before sitting on the throne. However, Xiaochen sat on the throne in front of the 6 powerful demonic geniuses in their peak states. He had no intention of seeking death. This Grandmaster-level elder had just finished saying good, when a small hole appeared in the starry heavens. A strand of divine light entered Xiaochen's body. In that instant, everyone could clearly feel Xiaochen's aura soaring endlessly from the throne. It felt like everything in the world wanted to worship him. Myriad heaven divine fist, deities descending, tenfold combat prowess, break. Xiaochen did not move from the throne. Instead, he punched at the stone finger descending from the sky. Xiaochen's tenfold combat prowess, which was now a peak half-sage, could even shake the sky. Its might was horrifying. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.